For the upcoming right-hander, brake 30 meters later and ease off the pressure.
Change at the front of the order in the Elite Division as Sim coach driver Andrew Dawson leads Tjeerd Plug after a stellar race victory last time out around Portimao. A brilliant opening lap for him, nearly an hour of consistent driving as well as a smooth pit stop saw the 194 take the top of the order for his first race victory of this season. He will be hoping for more of the same tonight, as we hope for another brilliant evening's worth of racing as we enter round 4 of the championship, and we welcome everyone back once again here in Italy around the 5.2 kilometres of Mugello, a circuit offering nearly everything you need in a motor race. We've got slow speed, we've got medium speed, we've got high speed corners, elevation change, and plenty of opportunity for overtaking at nearly every corner on the circuit, depending of course how bold and how brave our drivers are feeling out there tonight then. So as always, myself, Joseph Glass, and my commentary partner, Mr. Dara Thacker, join you once again in the commentary box. And Dara, as our championship begins to get toward the halfway stage, the orders begin to take shape, and those who want to leave an impression at the sharp end of the order should really start hunting for those high point scoring positions if they're going to stand a chance at finishing in the top 5, the top 3, and of course one of them putting their hands on the respective drivers' titles.
Yeah, we often talk about the opening couple of rounds being a chance to get yourself into the championship, put some points on the board, and if you have a difficult couple of results, it's just the start of the season. We've kind of got through that phase, haven't we? We're into this stage, as you said, where you need to really be making moves in the championship, making moves up towards the order. And Mugello is a circuit where qualifying is going to be crucial. You know, difficult to make too many moves around here, so many medium and high-speed corners that I think we're going to see the other drivers focus on their qualifying here tonight.
Absolutely, it's a very tricky track for some of these guys, of course. They have those prominent curves that iRacing introduced not so long ago, so we'll have a look at those as the drivers make their way around the circuit for qualifying. Then just under half an hour of this session left to go, 25 minutes, and we'll catch up with how some of them are doing after we've taken a look at the championship order and of course the sponsors for this series. So then, starting with our sponsors, as always, we come first to the Camé Group, who are, of course, our UK access and security experts who provide all the trophies for the drivers, and all of which they are competing for tonight. As we said, round 4, so there's this one and 5 more to go before those trophies get handed out. So any more information from Kame, you can find them at kame.com/UK. Trophy AI, of course, the AI coaching platform. If you guys want to improve your overall performance, you can go ahead and get some coaching at get.trophy.ai. SimCoach, the real-world racing service, of course. I say real-world, I mean one-to-one coaching support. The GT3s in the LMP2 category, they give one-to-one lessons and weekly group sessions. So if anyone wants to improve more of a personal way, then you can go ahead and find those guys at simcoach.co.uk. And finally, Garage Wraps, a new sponsor for this season, creating, designing, printing and installing bespoke wall wraps from your ideas. They'll come along and give your garage a brand new look. So if anyone is interested in that, be sure to head over to garagewraps.co.uk for some more information then. The calendar, we're getting well stuck into it now. We've had 3 races already. The Hungaroring, Zandvoort and Portimao have been the venues so far this season. We arrive here at Mugello before we start our Italian double header, heading next week to Imola. Then we're off to the Americas, first in Canada at the Gilles Villeneuve circuit. Then we head to Kota, Sebring and Road America for our final tour in round 10 back end of November. That will be in Japan around the Suzuka circuit. A very, very exciting circuit to finish off this championship season then. So, the all-important standings. Let's take a look at how things stack up at the front of the order. Let me first give that a quick refresh, because I know for a fact that we have the images of Andrew Dawson and Tjek Plug at the front of the order. Hopefully that comes back for us. There we go. Andrew Dawson and Tjek Plug in their Mercedes and their Lamborghinis are still leading the way. This time last week, though, Mr. Tjek Plug led the way. So that victory for Mr. Dawson out there around Portimao has been enough to get him a lead of the championship by 18 points, sitting on 262, leading the way as we approach the halfway point in the season. It's the 2 Vulcan Motorsports red drivers of Tjek Plug and Ignas Vinchezevskis, of course, in their Lamborghinis. They're doing their part to bring the fight to Andrew, of course. We've seen Mr. Vinchezevskis get 3 poles from 3 races, but is yet to take the top step of the podium. Hayden Miller got his first podium last time out for the Gold Vulcan team in his Corvette. He'll be wanting to get 200 points, over the 200 points mark tonight here in this one. Sam Derbyshire, the second of our Gold Vulcan drivers and the 4th of the Vulcan overall. Great for them inside the top 5. He started the season with a race victory. Sadly, hasn't been able to get another podium since then. A low 13th for Mr. Derbyshire last week. Justin Eloff, the lone Aston Martin in the elite class, bringing up side the top 6, just 12 points away from his sister team ahead of him. That's Vulcan, all the way from 2nd down to 6th. Jan Hilden missed last week, but he's had a podium to his name so far. That's good enough to get him on 150 points. And Lewis Kenyon, the third of our Corvettes, not inside the top 6 so far this season. Keep our eyes on him. He will definitely be fighting for that place by the time the season ends, no doubt about that one. Pedro Luis da Silva, arguably the lead driver outside of Vulcan. There's that many of them. The Portuguese driver, again, yet to get inside the top 6, but his McLaren has been going pretty steady so far. He will want to improve as well. Luke van Goortel had his best result of the season this time last week, a top 5 for him after failing to get inside the top 10 all season so far, and I believe that is the lead Porsche in the elite division. So good job to keep inside the top 10 for Mr. Van Goortel. Thomas Critchell, we've been seeing a lot of him recently. He's had some consistent results after his poor opening start to the season in his Mustang, so the Darkwing Racing driver will want to improve as well. Lucas Diaz Antonis missed the opening round. He scored in both of the previous rounds, and that will be enough to get him inside the top 12, the second of our Darkwing Racing drivers. And we haven't seen too much of him, of course, in his Lamborghini, but we'll keep our eyes out for him if those guys are on the circuit with us tonight.
Yeah, and we'll have a look now at the Premier standings, and it has been a good couple of weeks, isn't it, for Toby Hardiek, the Dutch driver, winning in Zandvoort, and then, of course, winning in Portimao last time out. And for the Phoenix Racing Blue Team, it is a very, very good start to the season. Scott Kostrick is second, but he only has one podium on the season so far, which almost shows how dominant Toby Hardiek has been able to be. That Scotsman will be second in the championship, looking to try and close on Toby Hardiek, but himself has got a nice gap back to John Ludbrook, and this is where the clump of drivers fighting over, the top 5, maybe even the top 3, I should say, may start to find themselves. John Ludbrook, 2 second places in a row, both just behind Toby Hardiek. Of course, came very close at Portimao last time out. He's 100 points behind our championship leader, but he leads this group of cars that includes Grant Miller, another Phoenix Racing driver, but this time for the red outfit, in P4. P3 was his best result. That was back at Zandvoort. Let's see if he can build on that tonight. Samuel Clark for the DXT team, another McLaren towards the top of the order. You'll note lots of McLarens in this Premier class. He's not yet recorded at a top 4, and yet is P5 in the championship. Lewis Hammond is P6, tied on points with Samuel Clark, and he also has a best result off of the podium. P4 it is for him, but he's consistently getting some top 10s, which are really pulling him through. Graham Favors was doing really well in that consistency department up until last week, where he dropped off the pace a touch more, I think, than he would have wanted to. He sits in 7th ahead of Barry Wenman in 8th, and Jan Osberg in 9th. Those guys quite close together, but, Jan Osberg, P9 in the championship, season's best of 7th, so lots to build on for him. Michael Rhodes really picked it up last week with a P4 at Portimao, and he now finds himself in the top 10. After Luke Bailey's heroics in the opening round of the season, well, we've not seen him score another point since, so the Vulcan Fasteners driver, at Glass Tech Racing, of course, is 11th in the championship with, we'll have to see if he can improve on that throughout the rest of the season. But Andrew Larkman arrived last week, didn't attend the opening couple of rounds, but came in with a bang. P3 onto the podium and immediately into the top 12. He'll be looking to get himself towards the top 10 tonight, you'd say.
Yeah, he'll definitely be one to see how he shapes up in qualifying, of course. I'm not quite sure. Did he have a good race? Did he have a good qualifying last week? We'll have to see. And, of course, thanks, Dara, for throwing in the Glass Tech Racing at the end there. Couldn't have done it without you. Not good for Luke, though, is it? He needs to get some points on the board. It looked pretty heroic from him, as you said, at the start of the season. Since then, sadly, though, he hasn't been able to score any more points. So let's take a look at the team's orders then. And, again, we are missing some of the logos. So let me see. Sorry about this, everyone. Let me see if I can just refresh that one in the same way. You'll kind of see, you'll peek behind the curtain there as the Premier Class results come back up. And would you look, Dara, we've loaded some images and we've lost some more. So we'll keep going and we'll just pretend like everything is there for us to see. So we have a new leader, new team's leader at the top of the order. Then the Axis Sim Sports Blue team take the lead ahead of the Vulcan drivers. So shame for Tjek Plurg to lose out to Andrew Dawson. Shame for his team to lose out to Axis Blue. Stephen Codman, David Hutchison, Mark Johnson, and Andrew Larkman, of course. There he is again, popping up, scoring good points for his team, I'm sure. Last time out, no team yet scoring 500 points, but we will definitely see some of them inside that threshold when we come back here this time next week. Vulcan will certainly be looking to take their place back at the front of the order, but trailing them by a decent little margin is the first of our Phoenix Racing teams. Graham Vivers, Toby Hardiek and Shane Cotton down there in Split B, doing well at the moment to bring home points good enough to see them in the top 3. The second of our Vulcan teams, the gold team of Miller, Derbyshire and Kenyon, still well within a fighting chance of getting themselves right toward the sharp end of our championship order. They'll have their eyes set on the Phoenix Racing drivers ahead of them. DC Motorsports next. They were pretty high up in the order from memory last week. They may have even been second or third. They've dropped down to 5th. Still yet to get inside the 400 point mark. That's Peter Duke, Jared Love, Wayne Douglas and Dave Collier, of course, all home to Split B. So we'll have to see how they get on after the session tonight. The Moonshiners Racing Club of Liam Fraser, James Fraser, Dean Sheesby and Rob Gregg sit on 354 points, 10 points clear of our second Phoenix Racing team. Josh Taylor, Stuart Rice, Grant Miller and Paul Matthew. Again, it's getting pretty, well, the numbers are getting pretty tight down there toward the end of our top 10. Only 12 points separates them from Sim Coach Andrew Dawson, bringing home the majority of the points in that team at the moment, of course, leading the way in the elite standings. Josh Benson, Jamie Foster and Robin Pownier with us, of course, here in Split A. They'll be looking to capitalise on what they can tonight, as I'm sure Dawson will want to extend that margin at the front of his championship. The first of our dark wing racing teams in P9, just 2 points behind Simcoach. It's Lucas Diaz Antonis, Thomas Critchell, Michael Rhodes and Lewis Hammond. The first of our GPX Sim Sports, it's Vertex, this time joint on points with the team in P9, Cowlishaw, Kostrick and Gareth Newton. As we look into the second half of the team's order now then, it's the second of the GPX Sim Sports teams, Noel Brown, Ludbrook and Sarika Desler, just 4 points shy of their sister team. MJK sit in P12 and the STL team are the last team inside the 300 point mark, 302 for them, and it's 284 for the lead of our DXT. Danny Phillips, Samuel Clark, Barry Wemban and Rowick Minorton are in 14th. It's the LS Racing team ahead of the Vulcan Fasteners team, the second of our STL in 17th. Then 226 points sits alongside the Simcast team of Starsmore, Maymar, Pilcher and Hunter. And then it's the two-man team, the only two-man team that we've got on screen at the minute. That means Osberg and Naj are responsible for scoring all the points in the Iris Racing team. That will probably be why we see them down in P19. And then rounding out the standings there, P20, Jan Hilden and Andrew Fairley, very competitive drivers in the elite class. I can't speak for Mr. Hurag down there, but 186 points. Those guys deserve more points than that for sure, and I'm sure we'll see them etch their way up the order as the season goes on, shall we say. So let's head to trackside and see how things are getting on for our drivers as we encroach onto the final 14 minutes of qualifying here. The order is beginning to be set, but as always, Dara, let's ride on board this time with this man, Justin Eloff, as he takes us for a ride around Mugello. Let's see if he improves. Currently just inside the top 10, definitely room for improvement by the South African.
There absolutely is, and I think for everybody into these final 15 minutes, we've seen in the opening few rounds how, hello, oh dear, there was contact there for Justin Eloff, and he's going to back off immediately. That is not what he needed to see at all. Convenient, really, that we got going for a lap, Joe, and immediately we didn't quite get started on it. But I think we've seen in the early couple of races so far this season that there have been a couple of drivers to improve right at the end of the session. It hasn't been easy, but those that have been able to put those improvements in the last couple of minutes really have been at a big advantage. Andrew Fairley's made his way through the opening couple of corners. Turn 3 is now where he approaches. It's a little bit of a rise over the crest. Keep it out of the gravel, as you have to be mindful of all the way around this circuit. And then you find yourself at the second of the chicanes, 4 and 5. Such a flowing part of the circuit. I mean, this entire track really is flowing, beautiful to drive, particularly in this kind of qualifying session. Then you're through this beautiful section of corners 6, 7 into 8 and 9, just as much commitment as you dare, rolling down the hill and then back up towards the crest on the top of the circuit through 8 and 9 and then up towards turn number 10. It's a stunning piece of racetrack, and I'd say this is one of the nicest circuits in the world. I don't think there's much argument around it.
I would agree. No, absolutely, I would 100% agree with that one. I've looked forward to this one ever since the calendar arrived, and albeit, Dara, you might agree as well that Imola next week won't be far behind it. They're both two very lovely circuits to arrive to for sure, and they often produce good racing then. So we'll see Andrew Fairley making his way through into the third sector then, flat out over both of those curves through 13 and 14. He's got one more braking zone to pick his mark. It's quite a late braking zone. You don't have to be too heavy on the brake. You want to just drift out wide, then get it tucked into the apex curb and get your foot down as soon as possible. Not too early to run out wide onto the gravel there that meets you on the right hand side, but just enough to maximise and carry the speed all the way down the straight. Will he be getting a toe off the car in front? Probably nothing to shout about. He crosses the line. I don't think it's going to be an improvement. Let's see where he stacks up. At the moment then, it's Mr. Andrew Dawson for SimCoach who leads the way there, 1/1000th of a second away from a dead time in the 45s. He'll be trying to get into the 44s by the time this session is over, but that will see Andrew Fairley sitting comfortably inside the top 3. Looking down the Premier class, Mr. Andrew Larkman has qualified in P2 at the moment, just a 10th behind Grant Miller. So Mr. Larkman hadn't shown up for the first 2 rounds, Dara, but it looks like he might be about to throw a spanner in the works for some of these guys who maybe thought they would have a bit of an early advantage in the Premier class.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of drivers involved in that battle, and you can see how close those margins are. It's very, very minimal between so many of those drivers. You'd expect that. This isn't the longest of circuits, however, it is very technical. So, on the flip side, maybe we are surprised to see drivers this close together. I think we could say for Andrew, he's doing fairly well in the elite class P3. Got to get that one in early. That's not the last time I'm going to be using that tonight, don't get me wrong. But he's in P3 for the time being. Derbyshire, of course, carrying on. Vulcan's really good qualifying at the start of this season. You've got Plurg up there as well. We're missing, at least from the top 20, Ignace Michkowski's, I think, from the race entirely. So he is going to be on the outside looking in terms of this. We're dropping some points, and, maybe not being at the front of the field to help out some teammates. We've seen how his qualifying pace has been a little bit better than his race pace so far this season. Let's see if Derbyshire can use some of his better race pace with advantage and just kind of avoid those mistakes in the races like we saw last week at Portimao. Could have cost him big points.
Yeah, putting pressure on, I'm not quite sure who that is actually, as he gets past him, going through that complex section of corners through 6, 7 and 8, but he manages to get his Corvette up and past just in time to continue on with his lap. Grant Miller then, down here in his McLaren, heading through the same sequence of corners that we just left Mr. Derbyshire on. He's doing very well at the moment, sitting at the front of his class, and as the time ticks down, as we've seen already this season, some of the better laps may have already been strung together. We might struggle to find many improvements as the session goes on, but for Grant's currently sitting in 4th in the Premier class. Move pulls over to one side of the circuit, that'll be him resetting back to the pit lane. Samuel Clark making his way out onto the circuit, he's in 4th at the moment. But back on Grant, a 6th, a 3rd and a 10th for him, so it started pretty well. It got even better as we entered into Zandvoort in the second round. Still good points in 10th for him last week, but he'll want to be improving on that. And we won't mention that from Samuel Clark there, the cold tyres catching him out as he heads through the exit of the opening corner. Something tells me, Dara, we might see quite a bit of that, especially on the opening lap, as all of these guys fight for position. It's a very inviting corner, as it was last week into turn 1, but as you get to the top section of the track, it quickly narrows up, and these guys are going to have to be pretty cautious. High fuel and cold tyres we've seen catching a lot of these guys out so far this season.
It has, and turn 1 isn't particularly easy here at Mugello at the best of times. Of course, your tyres will cool quite heavily down that main straight, very long, all the way towards turn number 1, and then the difficulty in the camber and the trickiness really in getting the power down to that opening turn means that it is easy to spin that rear end around that heavy rear end of these GT3s. Step around relatively easily compared to other race cars that you see. These aren't quite dirt trucks that you can throw into the corner and know that the rear end's going to exist and stick with you however much lock you put into the car. So it's going to be an interesting one nonetheless. We'll run our way through with Jan Hilden, I should say, Sancho Felix teammate, once again through the Arabiatas, but continues to look strong. It's just going to be a case of whether he can put the lap together. A couple of tenths off the second row, and to be alongside Fairley would be a big help.
It will. I was going to make a point about the straight there, Dara. I think you're definitely right. It's obviously a very long straight. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, someone in the comments, or even yourself if you know this, Dara, but I think it might be the second longest, at least on the circuits that one would know, the sort of more popular circuits. I'm pretty sure it comes in second behind Monza alone, so it is a very, very long circuit, of course, giving lots of opportunity for drivers to get a good little tow, good slipstream down toward the opening corner, setting them up nicely for a nice move going into the opening corner. But it also means that you can lose a lot of time out of the final corner if you get a snatch of the brake or too eager on the throttle, maybe even dipping a tyre into the gravel on the right hand side. It's going to take you so long before you can recover all of that lost time, and around a circuit like this you really can't afford that, because one mistake can really compound over quite a few corners. So drivers got to watch out, try and make it as clean of an exit as they can on the way out of that final corner to carry as much speed across the line, and of course to start well on the next lap.
Yeah, because you've not got many laps to go, have you, at this stage of the qualifying session? Only 6.5 minutes remain here, and time is disappearing fast. It's a minute 45 or so, which means that there's only time for another, 4 laps now from here to the end. It'll be 3 very soon. Of course, you can start a lap with the change in session now. We've said it the last couple of weeks, but a reminder, it used to be that when the timer hit 0, that was the end of the session. You couldn't finish the lap time you were on. That was it. But now, as long as you've crossed the line before the checkered flag flies, you can complete the lap that you're on. So you have an extra little bit of time to try and set a lap time here, but there isn't. I don't know how many drivers are going to be out there to set when you can see in that Premier class, 3rd through 7th at the moment, all in the pit lane. I say that, Janos Brooks coming out.
I was going to say, I thought the point you were going to make there, Dara, was the gaps between each of those drivers, because from Luke Bailey all the way down to Toby Hardiak, there's less than a tenth of a second separating each individual driver from the next, so they'll all be within 3 or 4 tenths of one another, but they'll all be looking at that thinking, maybe we can find that time. No one will be thinking that as much as Mr. Jan Hilden up there in 7th, as we just rode on board with him a few moments ago. He's 2 1,000ths of a second away from Lewis Kenyon in the top 6, and he is only 7 100ths of a second away from the top 5, so both of these guys will be looking to improve. Jamie Foster has gone green, personal best in the middle sector, can't improve. Andrew Villela making his way around on what is only his 7th lap. He hasn't posted a good time here. He's 5.5 seconds off the pace in P19. As he crosses the line, I think he's going to go again. It's not going to be an improvement. Justin Eloff, though, here he comes in his Aston Martin across the line. 2 personal best sectors for Justin. As he dropped it all there, Dara, in the final sector, he doesn't improve.
He doesn't, not when he needs at all, really. And we'll have to go again as you know, setting up that time is really taking away in this session. You know, the pressure increases exponentially if you make mistakes like that, particularly in the final sector on a flying lap. Luke Van Gortel has set a lap time but doesn't improve on his position. It would have been good enough for right around where he is, but stays in P5 in the 114, but good qualifying for Luke Van Gortel overall. By far the fastest Porsche here this evening so far, at least. Wesley Van Ren, currently P17 in that Premier class, looks like he's going to have a bit of an improvement. Can he jump up the order anywhere at all as he crosses the line? Does he jump? Let's see. Ooh, it's the long wait before the timing page adjusts. Well, all of that for a position. I guess it's a position, but he gave it a big build-up, and we should have expected the small jump from Wesley.
Well, it was a long wait and it was a small jump, but we can't blame him too much, because Wesley was, of course, the man who gave us something to cling on to. I think it was last week when the qualifying was pretty dry toward the end, and right at the last gasp he improved by a good handful of places, so you can't have it all. There's just been another jump. There was that Alex Fretwell making his way toward the, well, not toward the front, but he's into 15th now in the Premier Division. In the Elite Division. Let's bring up the gaps in total so we can see how the field is spread out. So 12 drivers. Matt Hoyland, the driver, trailing at the back of those inside a second. Thomas Critchell not so far off either. John Breitenbach 1.2 seconds away from the 45.001 set by the 194. At the front of the Elite class, and Grant Miller still has that nice cushion of just shy of a tenth and a half over Andrew Larkman. Bailey, Clark and Abbott's the rest of the top 5 in the pit lane. They're probably not going to make a reappearance onto the circuit. It will be too late for them really to get around and get the car up to temperature before the session ends. Larkman has just crossed the line. Doesn't look like he is improving on that one either. Lots and lots of yellow sectors coming in for these drivers. The top 5 in the early class minus Andrew Dawson also in the pit lane, so he will go around potentially one more time here in his Mercedes. We're right on board with him, why not, Dara? Wesley Van Ren also on an improvement at the moment.
Yeah, we'll see if he can go even further up the order if it's not just a move to P15. That'd be nice. Andrew Dawson, though, no improvement that time by 2.5 seconds off of his own pace. Wesley Van Ren, is that a jump from P16? It is. It's to P15. I mean, if he had another 14 laps, he'd be in a fantastic position, but sadly for him, he's got 2 more that he could set. Callum Ray has not set a lap time yet in this session, so this is going to be his first lap time on the board. Is it going to be good enough to put it in the top 20 in that in that elite class? Do not believe that it will be, and he will stay off the bottom of the timing tower for the moment. Oh, it's valid. Okay, I was going to say there's 19 elite drivers. I'm guessing he's the 20th, because then his name would appear. Correct? Am I right saying that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So if he does have that time, we'll definitely know about it.
Yeah, he's still making his way around the track. He's going to be tight on time. I think he will be able to start a lap. He's about a third of the way around with 1.5 minutes left to go, so he should be absolutely fine. And that was a bit messy by Mr. Dawson on his way over those curbs. He will not go again. Danny Weir, here he comes then across the line in his Porsche, 25th in class at the moment, 2.6 seconds away from pole as the number 5 as he crosses the line, sets a 49.7, doesn't improve on his best time so far this session. No one else, Dara, actually awfully close to the timing line. John Ludbrook, oh well, he was quite close coming into the final couple of corners, but he decided to park it up on the grass, potentially from a spin, but will not dwell on that one for too long. Here comes Michael Rhodes, the number 6 for Dark Wing Racing Red. Wesley Van Ren's up again in the middle sector. Surely he won't go into P40, and that would be, I mean, good for him, but that would also be not funny if he did. Crosses line does Michael Rhodes. Doesn't look like he's improved. Go on then, we'll ride on board with Wesley. See what he can do in the third and final sector. Needs about a 10th to take that position away from Marcel Breitenbach. And sadly for Wesley, that's going to be all she wrote in this session. He will have an opportunity to go around one more time, but to improve would be quite a bit to ask.
Yeah, it certainly would be. As time is starting to really tick down. Is there a move from Callum Ray? Callum Ray goes P19. He's on the board. Were you commenting on the livery there?
I am.
I was going to say, that's a gorgeous livery.
Very, very nice. The Marcel's one that we picked up on last week is nice, but yeah, the white really does stand out once again. So that is a I don't even know how I would describe that, to be honest, but it is lovely, let's just say, by Jean Breitenbach. And he's pulling off to the side of the road. I think he's not going to continue for an awful lot longer. But that is a cracking looking livery by the 172, as he does a nice little pirouette there and maybe resets himself back to the pit lane then. Yes, he does. Jan Osberg still out there on track. Michael Rhodes improving. He's currently 18th in the Premier class, setting 2 personal best sectors in Sector 1 and Sector 2. Sadly for him though, he needs 0.3 of a second just to overtake Owen Stewart in P17.
Yeah, and is there going to be a chance for him to do so? Needs that chunk of time, but he is one of the final drivers that is going to be able to settle out time in this qualifying session. We are pretty much done in the elite class, done and dusted completely. But is there any improvement for Michael Rhodes? The number 6, currently P18, trying to get himself potentially towards the top 50, maybe even the top 13 if he gets a big improvement. It's not the fastest final sector, but he does go to P17. We have a knack of finding Premier drivers improving by 1 spot. Can Wesley do it again at the end? Doesn't really look like it. He's not improving for the opening couple of sectors. Looks like he's settling for P15.
It does. He needed 99 1,000ths of a second to make that one happen. Sadly, could not, but at least he got himself up a couple of positions then. So there is our 4th qualifying session, all said and done. The grid is set ahead of this one, and we'll shortly run through it. But first, the drivers will have an opportunity to get some fuel on board. They'll be able to go out and test the waters, of course, on the cold tyres, high fuel. Something that we've seen before is a very worthwhile thing to do. So we'll keep our eyes out who takes that opportunity and who comes out on the circuit. Dara, we're looking ahead to the start of the race, and as we've said already, the cold tyres have definitely been a main feature of the opening stint, or the opening few laps around these places. But let's not forget that we arrive at some very, very tricky corners, of course. Opportunities through 1, 2, 3 and 4 to make a move if you so wish. But then, of course, how easy is it to make those mistakes going through 6 and 7, the downhill right left section? And of course, people who do make a mistake in that part of the circuit could then be swallowed up by drivers as they head back up the hill through the 2 Arabiata corners.
Yeah, it's such a fantastic circuit. I think it really has all the elements to make it a real challenge and B, a classic, really. And to have the sun setting here as well, over in the Tuscan Hills. This is going to be probably the most picturesque race ESR's... oh, goodness me, there's a pound. The ESR, or SRI, of course, as we are now, has ever done. You know, it's gorgeous through here. I was lucky enough to travel underneath it on train over the summer. Didn't quite see the circuit, but it is a gorgeous part of the world. And yeah, the circuit, all the elements to it. Like you said, the downhill section, particularly at the back end of the circuit, really challenges the drivers. And if you're pushing hard, it's so easy to push just past that limit. But that's really what makes it such a fantastic challenge. It's easy to find that limit, but then having the self-control not to go over it is the difficult part, but also shows the real race craft of some of these guys.
So as we've seen a bit of a theme as the season's gone on, typically we saw, not many drivers coming out there at the start of the warm-up. But as we've said, it's becoming more and more crucial for those guys just to get a bit of a sighter out there in how their cars might feel. And of course, maybe take it as an opportunity now to push the limits a little bit more than they might want to at the start of the session, just to see where they are. Pull back a little bit and try and survive the opening spell out here tonight. So a lot of elite drivers out there on the circuit. Marcel Breitenbach, one of the few in the Premier class taking to the field. Lewis Hammond is also there as well to share some So share the track with him. Looking at the comments coming in, welcome everyone as you join us. Of course, be sure to leave a like on the broadcast. That helps us out a lot. We've got some support for various teams tonight. Lots for Darkwing, and a bit of support for Tom, Mike, and Lewis. We've got Barry Wendman in the chat letting us know that he's got a mismatch of parts at the moment, so he's got some things on order, but he's still waiting for the pedals, Dara. So he's had to go over to the old trusty Logitech. So Mr. Barry Wendman is using some less than ideal equipment, let's say, for this race tonight. At the moment, though, it's not going too bad for him. We'll have to remind ourselves where he stacks up when the grid is shown again. But best of luck to this man right here in his McLaren, making the best out of the bad situation on equipment that I'm sure he would rather not use.
Yeah, it's never fun when you've got a little bit of technology that you're almost forced into using, but you don't really want to be using it. It plays on the mind a bit, and I think it can not forgive mistakes that you make, but it almost creates an excuse that, understandably, you're going to give yourself for any mistakes that you make. And I think it can play into a little bit of under expectation of what you can achieve. So it's going to be difficult for Barry tonight. If he still, if he's still pressing on and still believes in the pace and can kind of trust the equipment, I think he's going to do really well. But it is difficult to do so if it's not something that you want to be using or really expect to be using either. But that's all part of the joy of sim racing, isn't it? Really.
It is. We've also got Ashley Brooks in the chat saying, "Look at Big Joe Glass pretending what he knows, what he's talking about." So, I mean, a small dig there. I'll take it in good faith, Ashley. And of course, we've competed in 10 championships or whatever, and this time, Dara, in AGTC, it's actually the first time he leads me halfway through a season, so it's 10-1, but we'll allow it. I've got to give him something back, don't I? So he's obviously is he out there or is he in B split? I think he's in B split, but he's obviously not. He's obviously not in the warm up, is he? He's on his phone, so fingers crossed it goes well for him at the start of this one. Comes into the pit lane. Does Mr. Wendman. 1 lap was good enough for him then. 1 minute to go in this session. Who else is out there? Luke Bailey crosses the line in that Vulcan Fasteners Mercedes livery. And of course, we saw Luke. It was from hero to zero, really, in the first 2 weeks of the championship. Missing out last week. Back here again tonight is the number 18. All eyes on him, really, because you can never really know what to predict when someone's won a race and then they haven't scored any points in the next 2. You don't really have the best form to go off. It could be an incredible result by Mr. Bailey here tonight if he can keep it on the island. But of course, you never know how it's going to end up, do you?
No, you never do. And it's the unpredictability that I think really, it's what really denotes motorsport, not just sim racing as well. But it is that unpredictability, that volatility. It's a good word. In the orders in the championships that really can be quite thrilling, not just to be a part of, but to watch as well, and that's why we keep going back to racing week after week in whatever form that it is in. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what can happen over the course of the rest of the season, even this evening. As I see, Joe, you're highlighting a livery that you may know a little bit well. With is that your last name on the top? I think it could be.
It might well be, Dara. It may be a coincidence, but I'll tell you, it isn't. So I haven't really. Well, we looked at this quite a lot with Matt Hoyland around the Hungaroring, but since then we haven't really seen it on the circuit very much. Matt hasn't exactly been in the front of his fray. You might notice an issue there, Dara. On the side of the panel, it says ESR, and we are no longer. So that might have to get updated. But we'll brush past that one as the platform saves me there a little bit and ends the warm-up session. We'll now be approaching the start of the race, and I'm hoping we get a full formation lap here. I think we do around this one, so that'll give us plenty of time to run through the grid. Yes, we do. And here we go. Let's bring up the grid, not the timing order, and then we'll have a look at how things stack up for the 4th round of the season. So, starting on the front row of the grid for the first time this season, note, Dara, that I don't think we have Mr. Vinchezewski's with us at all tonight. So, his record at starting on 3 consecutive poles comes to an end, and he's not anywhere to be seen out there on the circuit tonight. Andrew Dawson leading the way, 1/1000th away from a 44, but he'll take it because it was good enough to get him at the front of the order. The 194 starts ahead of Sam Derbyshire, who will share the front row alongside him. That'll be fireworks. This time, Dara, 3 teams inside the top 3, something that I don't think we've seen so far this season. Andrew Fairley back on the horse after those results that we talked about earlier. For him, it wasn't doing the best that he could do, but he'll be absolutely over the moon to start so high up the order this time. Fingers crossed for him, it all ends well. Tjeerd Plug will share the second row of the grid alongside him in the second of our Vulcan drivers, first of the red order, of course. Luke van Gortel will start in 5th ahead of Lewis Kenyon. It'll be Jan Hilden who starts alongside Pedro Louis de Silva for this one inside the top 8. Josh Taylor and Justin Eloff rounding out the top 10. Hayden Miller and Matt Hoyland, the 2 drivers, still within a second of pole position for the Vulcan Motorsports Gold and the Vulcan Fastness team. It's Thomas Critchell and Sean Breitenbach in 13th and 14th before Grant Miller takes his pole position in the Premier Division. The number 80 for Phoenix Racing Red leads the way, and he's got a 1-car gap down to Andrew Larkman. Alex Fretwell will start in between them on row 8. Then it's Larkman, Phillips, Foster and Luke Bailey rounding out the top 20 as we cycle on through. Samuel Clark will lead ahead of Ryan Abbott on row 11. It'll be Jan Osberg and Paul Cowlishaw in a bit of a Premier Division sandwich there for the GPX SimSport Xeon driver. Hossein Sarkadesla will lead the way ahead of 3 rows worth of Premier drivers, ahead of Ludbrook Cotton. Viva's Hardiak Championship leader, not the best qualifying for him. He's got work to do if he wants to score good points in this one tonight. It'll be Rob Mackay who starts in P30. Callum Ray right down the order there, mixing it in with the Premier class. Difficult for him to manage that in the opening stages of this one. Lewis Hammond will start in P32. Marcel Breitenbach and Wesley Van Ren will start ahead of Andre Muntian and Michael Rhodes. It'll be Owen Seward starting ahead of elite driver Andre Viala, 2.7 seconds away from his class leader. Liam Yarnasu and Barry Wentman, of course, for DXT Motorsports KMR on that dodgy equipment. We'll keep our eyes on how Barry goes, the number 56. And now we enter the final 7 drivers in our 47 car grid. Pete Paver in P11. It'll be Dennis Curler, Rob Smith, James Pallow and Danny Weir, just shy of 4 seconds away, the pair of them, Weir and Fellows, for DXT and Flatline Racing. And then I think it's becoming a bit of a theme with Thiago Leisa for 9 Pegasus Panthera failing to qualify. No time set by the Brazilian 93 order, and he will round off the field ahead of this 47 car race. They're just making their way through the second of the Arabiatas. We'll be heading through Sector 2 and Sector 3 before we get underway for round 4 of the championship.
Yeah, it's a long old lap, isn't it, here, particularly when you're going at about 5 miles an hour, but that's kind of what we're suffering for the time being. We'll have a full hour's worth of frantic action, though, of course. I quite like the fact that this season we are getting a bit of synergy with the races, because it's nice to have different formats week to week. It changes up the order a bit, but there's also something I think really, really quite special about having the same format every evening over the course of the championship. You know exactly what to expect. Drivers are going to come in feeling like they know the strategy, but they don't necessarily know how it's going to play out from qualifying. So yeah, looking forward to this one. Ambient temperature gorgeous, track temperature wonderful. It's a perfect evening for racing.
It is. It will of course be getting a little bit cooler, a little bit colder as the session goes on. The sun will begin to set behind those Italian mountains, and Sam Derbyshire is putting lots of pressure on Andrew Dawson. He was momentarily ahead of him there as the field bunches up, so spread out as they make their way through the lap, but at this point they all bunch up. They should try to be within a 3-car length margin of the car ahead before they arrive into the final corner then. So the pace car will peel in. It will be over to Dawson to get us underway for this one, but he'll be grateful that he doesn't have a pack of Vulcan drivers in behind him. It will be all's fair, 3 of them in that left-hand column. It's Dawson, Derbyshire, Fairley, Plurg and Van Gortel, the top 5. He'll lead us toward the line. The start gantry is a little bit further down, but Dawson can go any time after the green light.
Yeah, here we go then. 60 minutes on the clock at Mugello. We're going to be waiting. The lights are on. We should be going racing already. Good start, I believe, from the front of the field. Let's see if there can be any move from the front by the likes of Plurg sitting in P2, fairly looking to try and get into P2 as well. But they will fan out behind. 2, 3, maybe even 4 wide right at the back of the pack as they run into towards turn 1. There we are. 4 wide for P number 5. Inside line. Goodness me, that's dramatic in the opening corner of the race. It's going to be just about on the inside. The 150 going to pull through. because that's Andrew Fairley's teammate running towards turn number 2. Jan Hilden, of course it is, coming through the pack. It was Kenyan Van Gortel, Pedro da Silva getting involved in all of that as well. A good start for Grant Miller in the Premier class. He's got away at the front, but frantic action, just as would be expected.
Marcel Brayton back down the order then. He's one of the few to have an issue. Luke Van Gortel's dropped outside the top 5, down into P10, with Jan Hilden making his way up 2 places as all the drivers come through the opening sector. Then so far so good. It looks like there's an issue there at the back. That's John Brayton back in his lovely livery, getting spun around there. That's one of the DXT cars with a missing front end, and I'm not sure who that is, the Ferrari, who's just lost his front end. That's Andre Viella of the elite class, who started all the way down there. Callum Ray out, John Brayton back with the meatball flag. He'll have to reset back to the pit lane, which he does. Andrew Larkman struggling there, the guy who did so well in his first race of the season last time to secure a podium, looking like he's got damage so early on. That's going to be hard to recover from as the race goes on. That's damage for Justin Eloff, one of the leaders toward the sharp end of the elite class, 6th coming into tonight, and that front bumper is clinging on for life. Jan Osberg coming through again with damage on the front of that McLaren. All news is good for the top 4. They remain as they are as they come around the final corner to complete the first lap.
Yeah, Andrew Dawson, fantastic launch from him, wasn't it? To get away from the front and to defend Danny towards Tom. As we said, such a long run that lots of slipstream had to be factored in, but he'd been able to mitigate that threat for the time being. At least Sam Derbyshire is tracking him in behind him. The Northern Irishman is a wily customer, isn't he? We talked last week about how he had the issues on the opening lap at Portimao, but, you know, he was some 40 seconds off the pace after about 10 minutes. Half an hour later, he was only about 35 seconds off the lead. So he had some fantastic pace, but just wasn't able to quite use it in the way that I think he would have wanted to. He's now in a great position to use this pace. And if he can get through on Andrew Dawson, we might try and see him pull away early on. Or, alternatively, the fact that he's in P2 and right behind the leader means that he can conserve an amount of fuel that Andrew Dawson's going to struggle to save himself.
That's exactly what we've seen. That's been the subject of the season so far. The driver in P2 seemingly often has the pace to just sit comfortably in behind the leader while they do all the hard work, and the guy in P2 saves a lot of fuel then. So it's race winner from the opening round in the Hungaroring versus race winner last week in Portimao, currently leading the field in a 1-2. Race winner from race 2, Tech Pleur, currently in 4th, back there in that Lamborghini, just at the back of the picture. So it is all eyes on the front at the moment, because these drivers are so experienced in these cars and so competitive in this league. Paul Cowlishaw, Owen Seward, I believe that is, and Ryan Abbott potentially, who's changed into the Aston Martin. Seward getting his Mercedes very close to the rear end of that GPX Porsche. This is an out-of-class battle, of course. Cowlishaw in the elite class. He's got 2 drivers of Van Ren and Seward for company in behind him. We've got Pete Paiva going side by side, this time in the Aston Martin once again, as Andrew Fellows gets himself up and around. Fellows started right down the back of the order. He's up 11 places from the start into P18 in his class, and Matt Hoyland looks like he's making a move around the outside of Thomas Critchell as they head into turn 1. The Mustang forces it on the stoppers, and Matt Hoyland will look to go around the outside. He's not going to be able to do it on this occasion. Is he going to think about a late dive up the inside? No, he's not. Thomas Critchell does well to hold on to that position at the start of this race, and Paul Cowlishaw, Dara, is in the pit lane. Looks like he is out for an early stop. He may not come back out onto the circuit. We'll keep our eyes on that one as we start on to lap 2. Matt Hoyland at 1 place, Thomas Critchell ahead of him up 3 places.
Yeah, really frustrating start for Paul Cowlishaw. In the end, well, I say in the end, in the start really, right? We're only a couple of laps into this one. Hoyland still in a good place, tracking the likes of Critchell and Van Gortel towards the top of the order, but no one is really being able to separate themselves. Some already dipping below the hills here around Tuscany, and wide goes Thomas Critchell, kicking a big old chunk of gravel into the face of Hoyland, which won't be particularly pleasant. But the 1, 2, 3 will continue onwards in P11. Wanted to have a quick note on the Premier class. Luke Bailey and Grant Miller, to make sense, Samuel Clark are away. We'll have to see if they can almost use this to their advantage, because there's a 1.8 second gap between Clark and Sarki Dassler already, and then back from Sarki Dassler it's another 2.5 seconds. You know, the gap between the top 10 in the Premier class is just about 14 seconds, whereas in the Elite class it's 5.5, which just shows that it's gapping out a little bit quicker in that slower class here this evening. we could see a couple of the drivers start to run away with it or consolidate some good points early on to maybe make sure that they can bring home in the second half of the race.
Absolutely. We'll soon cut back to see how Luke took that position away from Grant Miller, but Luke is up 5 places at the moment, so he's had a sensational start to this race, getting himself up from 6th into 1st position. Very good for him. John Ludbrook looks to have had an issue as Jamie Foster gets himself up the inside of Miller, who nicely stays out the way of the elite class driver coming through, but that does put another machine in between him and the man that he is chasing in that blue Mercedes ahead of him. I was going to make a point there on Matt Hoyland just before we cut away. Matt's actually been considering swapping to the Mustang because he's not having too many favours with the Mercedes, but it might be about to favour him now as he heads through the inside at turn 6, gets that one done up past him. That might have just changed his mood a little bit, because of all machines that he was thinking about swapping to, it was the Mustang, and for a moment there he had one in front and one behind, almost teasing with the idea of him to swap, but he's got past a pair of them now and he can set his eyes ahead on what is Van Gortel, Miller and Silva in the next pack. The top 4 still with one another, but no changes in the order up there. Jan Hilden is in a little bit of a space on his own, 2.5 seconds away from the leaders, but only half a second clear of this trailing pack that we ride on board with now. Jamie Foster still in between the 2 leaders in the Premier Class, and Liam Yanasu and Michael Rhodes leading this cluster. Very, very busy indeed, and they've got the damaged Andrea Viella in that Ferrari ahead, who's going to be really holding up the pack. One of them is going to have to put a move on, and Rob Mackay has got damage in behind them as well. These 2 McLarens in the middle of the Ferrari and the Mercedes really have to get on with it, because they've got a lot of damage around them.
Yeah, you can see it's not pretty to look at realistically, but if you're the driver having to suffer with it, it's just going to be painful so early on into the race as well. Bit of a send then to the inside on Liam Yanasu, of course. Goes one of those elite drivers. Luke Bailey sets the fastest lap of the race in the Premier Class. He's looking to pull away from Grant Miller. Andrew Dawson also set the fastest lap of the race in the elite class. So drivers at the front starting to pull away a bit, maybe not conserving the fuel just yet. That time will soon come. Michael Rhodes looking to try and take advantage in just a moment if he can get through on Liam Yanasu, but he can't do it just yet. And getting stuck in this train is, costing these guys so much time. And the top 8 now getting away in the Premier Class, and that gap is just increasing exponentially each lap now.
It is. I'm not quite sure how long Viella is going to be able to hang on to this. Really starting to get in the way slightly of the Premier drivers. He's entitled to be there, of course. Race control not pulling him in for the damage on the front of that Ferrari, so these guys in behind are going to have to just put up with it. But soon I think Liam's going to have to get his elbows out, maybe try and catch him off guard, force the error through one of these corners. Very slow there without the downforce to turn in, and that is exactly what he needs to do. Wait for that moment, get himself alongside. That's what he's done. He's put himself and his McLaren ahead. Next job comes to Michael Rhodes. However, even though he's got damage, Rob Mackay in that Mercedes in front not doing too bad. Both of them off the circuit. Viella chooses to stay out the way because he's got a huge cluster of cars coming through there. And that's Toby Hardiek, championship leader, battling with Rob Mackay. Of course, Rob's got damage, and it looks like Andre Muntian might fancy getting a good run out of the corner to put the championship leader in the 31 machine under a little bit of pressure. If I was Toby Hardiek right now, I would be praying that these guys keep it clean. He's got to score points, even if it's not where he'd want to be. Better be in 12th than anywhere further down.
Yeah, it's just not been an easy start to the evening. He's had a couple of nice races so far this season, but it's not looking like it's going to be as easy for him tonight. Luke Bailey will have to defend from Grant Miller relatively soon, as Miller now sets the fastest lap time of the race so far in that Premier Class. I think something to note, of course, with the sun is this is the same time of day that we've had set for the rest of the races, but because there are hills around the circuit, the sun, technically sets a little bit earlier. It goes behind the horizon because the horizon is just that much more elevated around the circuit. At Zandvoort a couple of weeks ago, with the sun setting over the sea, it really took until the minute of sunset before we started getting a lot of darkness creeping in. But you can already see we're only 10 minutes into the race here in Mugello, and the light is already fading quite heavily. These lights are going to be very much coming into use. So I don't know if we're going to barely be able to see some of the crowd by the end of this race, God forbid.
I know, you've read my mind there, Dara. I was just about to say the same thing as it got awfully tense going into, awfully dark going into turn 1. It got awfully tense here between Hoyland and Luke Van Gortel. It seems at the moment it's all the Vulcan drivers who are getting involved in all the action. We can't get enough of that blue Mercedes as Højlund challenges the Porsche around the outside this time once again. Not going to be able to make that one stick as they head through turn 12. He's not going to have too much of a pace advantage either through 13 and 14. Going to have to stay where he is for the time being. We will soon bring you that race leading overtake between Bailey and Miller. Nice to see that we have a top 15 there. If I just jump to the overall, we have a top 15 of elite drivers. Then we have a lovely cluster of drivers, 18 of them in fact, all the way down to Justin Eloff, who has damage, of course. Will be struggling with his pace, I'm sure, for the foreseeable. So it's great that we have almost 2 races going on in one instance here out there on the track. It's exactly what we like to see. And is this Jan Hilden? Yes, it is, putting all sorts of pressure on the back of that Lamborghini to get himself inside the top 4. Then he's got a 3-second gap to overcome if he wants to stay with the lead through it, with a chance to get onto that podium.
Still very early stages in this race, but you do feel like you want to be making moves right now towards the front of the field if you're in this position, if you have aspirations of coming away with the with at least a podium tonight. And if you're Jan Hilden, I think that'd be a fair expectation. Or having said that, if Andrew Felix was going to be just in front of him, getting a 3-4 for Darkwing would be really impressive. Of course, they had their issues back at Zandvoort. There was contact between the two of them, so maybe they don't want to see each other too close together. However, good points on the board would be a really important I think consideration to make here. Derbyshire for Vulcan in second, Plurg in fourth as well. And if you just take second and fourth compared to third and fifth, of course, it's advantage Vulcan Motorsports for the moment. So Jan Hilden against Plurg could be a really important, almost micro battle for the championship.
Ask and you shall receive, mate. Here's Lewis Hammond making his way around the circuit. He has come back out of the pits. He's served. Did he have a drive-through coming into this one tonight? I'm going to have to double check. He has got into the pit box for what looks to be a 4-second stop, but I did remember seeing him asking a question in the server about how to serve a drive-through, so I will just double check that one to see if he did have the points to do that. I'm not sure if he did though, because I don't think Lewis has been caught up in an awful lot so far this season. Rob Mackay and Toby Hardiak still doing battle, and it's getting very dark very quick out there, Dara. I think you're right. The mountains are going to cause a problem, and that's contact between the championship leader and Mr. Rob Mackay, which drops him down 2 places. He won't be happy for that, but he'll be glad that it's a minimal contact, minimal damage, as Andrew Muntian looks to make a move around the outside of that Mercedes, but can't make that one stick. Hardiak may be better for him, Dara, just to kind of bide his time here, maybe try and save a little bit of fuel, not get caught up in the argy-bargy between all these front-wheel drivers, and hope that he can play the game in the long run.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the best bet for Toby Hardiak. The issue is he's slipping back in the order a little bit, now P14. And just not where he wants to be at all. Andre Muntian and Rob Mackay fighting just up in front of these guys side by side. You can just about see that in the haze now, in the dark. These lights aren't doing too much to help illuminate the circuit at the moment, so drivers may be struggling just a little bit. There is Rob Mackay. He's got Barry Wendman right behind him, Toby Hardiak in 14th as well, so not exactly what you'd want to see if you are looking in your wing mirrors. Michael Rhodes with a slight warning there. He's just in front of this battle in P10, but I mean, normally we settle down after 10 minutes in a race and drivers get themselves into a rhythm. We haven't quite met that 10-minute mark. It might take more like 15 or 20 before we start seeing drivers settle into a rhythm. Yeah,
crazy, to be honest. I think you're absolutely right. We're best part of 15 minutes into the race now, and still all sorts of scraps up and down the order. It's exactly what we like to see. 2 of the AB Designs liveries on that McLaren and that Mercedes doing battle. Let's hope they don't trade paints anytime soon, because that will not be a good viewing for Mr. Brooks, who's of course with us in the chat. And there goes Barry Wendman on his Logitech pedals, getting past Mr. Mackay. We won't highlight that one too much, but if Rob knew the hardware that his opponents were coming up against him with, he might not be too pleased that Mr. Wendman has just got himself by. Thomas Critchell has been passed by Matt Højlund, of course. We saw that a little bit earlier on, but now it's the 2 Mustangs in the Elite Division doing well. We've got actually a 3-4 between Fairley and Hilden, and an 11-12 between our 4 Mustangs in the Elite class, so they're all sharing the same place on the circuit. Højlund looking to get himself past Hayden Miller, slowly chipping away at this one is Matt Højlund, up 2 places from the start and putting pressure on the 181 ahead, of course. Luke Van Gortel is the one who's dropped down. Did it just get bright all of a sudden there, Dara? What's happened there? Was there a cloud that's been blocking the sun this whole time?
I don't know.
It did just get an awful lot brighter.
No, the sun's changed position. We saw, didn't we, coming through Arrabbiata 2,
The
coming out to the
sun
back end of
has
the
changed
circuit.
position. You heard it here
Well,
first, folks.
Hang on, can we try and go on board with somebody going through turn 7 and 8 quickly, or turn 6 and 7? Whoever that could be.
That might be Hammond. Well, it'll be there soon enough. That's right on board.
Yeah, let's run with it. Because the sun, we saw it, during the race, was sat just above the horizon as they made their way up the hill again through 7 and 8. So let's see where it is now, because I think it's higher in the sky. It might not be, but I thought it was, unless I'm going absolutely crazy. Let's see. No, the sun's definitely higher in the sky through there. He comes down the hill. He's going to turn right to go up the hill. We'll get a better view then. I'm going to go back on the broadcast to make sure I'm not going completely doolally.
Well,
But the sun's higher in the sky.
Yeah, we could always do a little bit of investigative journalism by going back and taking a look at how it looked up the inside. Perfect timing there by Mr. Hammond as he makes a move on that stricken, damaged car. I think that's Danny Weir in that Porsche yesterday. Sadly for Danny, Lewis, the number 32 machine, gets himself up and past. So let's just go and take a look at a random event on lap number 4, shall we? And we'll see how the surroundings contrast. No, it's the same. It's just as bright as it was. What about the third lap, Darren? That was about when it was... Am I going back too far? I'm as confused as you are, to be honest.
Was it...
There
yeah.
we go.
Have we... Yeah. That can't be a cloud, surely. That's got to be behind that. Yeah, that's behind the horizon. I don't know.
Let's ride on board with seeing it just for a little while. Let's try and get to the bottom of this. Someone might be watching us in the chat thinking these guys are so stupid because they don't know why. Maybe it's really obvious. But it just got brighter all of a sudden. There's no sunshine to be seen anywhere on the circuit as these drivers make their way around. And then all of a sudden it's got brighter again. So, hey, I mean, that bodes well for them. It bodes well for us because we can see what we're looking at. But that really caught me by surprise for a little while there.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to maintain the sun's gone backwards. That's what's happened. That's the only possible explanation. And I think scientists would agree, quite frankly.
Maybe we've got Mr. Bostock playing God in the race control booth. Somehow maybe he's got control of that and he's just dialing back the clock in the race session there because he's realised it might get a little bit dark sooner than we expected. So let's just bring back the clock. I'm joking, everybody. You can't do that. But that is very strange. Anyway, it bodes well for us. It bodes well for them because we can see what's going out there in the circuit. And it was a little bit of cause for concern because at the rate that we were seeing the darkness come over the circuit, it would have been dark by the time we finished the race. And that, I don't think, is what the drivers would have had planned.
No, not at all. It's not really what we want to have. Well, I mean, I think they expected to end the race in near darkness, but after a nice period of evening light, I don't think they expected to end too soon, and that might be what the any correction has come in to try and fix. I mean, we're nearly a third of the way, through this race already, which is of course delightful to see. We are getting through this race and getting some great action with it as well. But yeah, Sun playing weird mind games on us at the moment. What happened? This was from lap 1, wasn't it, Joe?
It was. This is Luke Bailey getting past Grant Miller. That's the McLaren ahead. Smoke bloomed up, 2 cars off the track. They both slow down, which is good. It's questionable. Did he pass him under yellow flags there? Will Grant be happy about that one? Let's ride on board from the chopper cam. This should give us a little bit of a better idea. As Miller sees the smoke ahead, he slows a lot. And then he just narrowly avoids that rejoining car. I don't think the same can be said for a few of the drivers in behind. All's fair as it stands, I would imagine. Let's see what Mr. Miller thought of that one. I'm sure he will let us know after the race is done. That camera angle is very loud as the engines pass by it for the cars coming through. I can barely hear myself think as we pass over that one. But here's Thomas Critchell, the 2 Mustangs, still doing battle, and Matt Hoyland putting pressure on Hayden Miller. We've got 2 sets of 2 cars going bumper to bumper. He's heading towards the first corner. Hoyland and Hayden are going to get there first around the outside. Looks to Mercedes once again. He kind of gets shoved out the way a little bit. In fact, no, he doesn't. Hayden kept that very tight indeed to the inside curve. Hoyland keeps that one where it was. Taylor is still going bumper to bumper with Mr. Critchell, but he holds on to the position as it stands, getting feisty indeed for the places inside the top 8 in the elite class here. 20 minutes gone 40 to go.
Expect that, wouldn't you, really? Drivers getting quite aggressive in these parts of the field. Of course, big points could be on offer for the big winners here this evening. Thomas Critchell looking to try and defend from Josh Taylor. Those two Mustangs working their way down the hill. Good bit of battling between them right on the edge of the top 10. But again, only some 15 seconds off the pace. It is crazy that we've got the top 13 split by 19 seconds, and then with the issues that other drivers have had, there's then a 48-second gap back to Paul Cowlishaw with Andrew Feller and Justin Neeloff in there as well. So bit of a weird turn of events at the front of the elite class. It's gapped out a little bit more in the Premier class, but generally they're closer.
Well, it's no surprise, Tara. We've just had an explanation in the chat. The UFOs have arrived to collect the aliens who are leading the elite class. Sadly, they're still out there on the track. But yeah, those guys have so much pace that we might be seeing some unidentified objects that could block the sun. You never know. Now, I don't want to get too conspiratorial with you, Dara, but it just seemed pretty plausible that that might have been the reason why. So Hayden Miller is still doing okay to defend against Matt Hoyland. We might be seeing them just at the back of the picture. Yes, we are, but Lewis Kenyon is the one now defending the inside against Pedro Luis da Silva. Pedro doing very well at the moment. Dive down the inside. Looks the Porsche. I don't think Pedro was expecting to see Mr. Van Gotel there, but earlier, of course, Van Gotel had that issue, and that's very close between them. Muscling his way through goes the McLaren. The pair of them managed to keep it on the track there, and Luis da Silva said, no thank you. You're taking him through turn one. Luke Van Gotel not happy about the way the McLaren driver took that position back. I was going to say though, Dara, Luke had so much pace in qualifying, a bit of an issue on lap one, that you'd think he'd have the pace over the race distance to put it on some of these drivers, and that's exactly what we saw him doing there on Luis da Silva, who was looking ahead to Kenyon and then all of a sudden had to look in his mirror to see Van Gotel coming through in that Porsche.
Yeah, and Luke Van Gotel doing a good job in this race so far overall. That Porsche's not really been a good one to choose for the elite class, but he's doing a good job in it for the time being. Andre Muntian going past Pete Paeva in the sole one of two Aston Martins in that Premier class. That's for P17 and P18, and the remaining driver has now very much got that one done.
I think that might have been the curb for him there. Let's go back and take a look at how that one happened. I think, did he eat too much of the curb? It looked like the Aston Martin was so far away from him there. No, he's just lost it. He's oversteered, couldn't catch the correction, and the BMW spins around, manages to keep it out of the barrier though, that he can get himself going again, although he stayed still there. I wonder, oh no, he is going, just getting himself set before he heads back out there to the track. Samuel Clark is doing okay at the front as well. We got Danny Elliott in the chat asking how he was getting on, so it's going pretty well for Mr. Clark at the moment. He's in P4 and he's chasing down Ryan Abbott's in third here, so looking on for, well, to at least spend some time in the podium positions potentially for this McLaren as things go on. And there's been an issue for Hayden Miller higher up the order, Dara, because he is out and he's reset back to the pit lane. Let's see how that one happened.
Yeah, let's see. Big name, Hayden Miller, of course, in this race, in one of the Vulcan cars as well. What's happened to turn one? Is he given a hit?
No.
Doesn't look like it. There may have been, phantom contact, but he wasn't given any contact that we could see on the screen. See, on board from the car behind. Very weird place to lose the car.
Oh, just over
Maybe
rotated.
he has just lost the rear end of the car. Yeah, over-rotated the car, and Hoyland's done nothing wrong there. And he'll enjoy the position gained.
I absolutely will, for sure. So that's Hoyland. He's slowly ticking his way up the order. That might have just replenished his faith in the Mercedes, because he has been a little bit down and out as of late in that elite class, of course. Not inside the top 12, so we didn't cover Hoyland in our standings coverage before the start of this race, which kind of shows how much he might be struggling in that Mercedes, especially against some of the competition that he has in class. But so far, so good for Mr. Hoyland. 1.1 seconds behind Luke Van Gotel, who's of course chasing after Pedro Luis da Silva. So all it takes is these two drivers who've got a little bit feisty already in this race. As Van Gotel goes wide, this could be Hoyland's opportunity to catch up on that Porsche. We said it earlier, Dara, a mistake dipping the right side of your car into that gravel met with one of the longest straights in Europe. It takes you so long to recover the time. Is Hoyland going to capitalise, or is he just going to put pressure on the Porsche for the meantime? Thinks better of it, backs out, and he's going to be all in the mirrors of that Porsche. All the while, Pedro Luis da Silva has some breathing room now. He can set off after Lewis Kenyon once again.
Yeah, and this time that can't depend on the car in front. Just losing that rear end through turn number 1's going to have to make the move organically here. And Luke Van Gortel has been staunchly defending in this race. So far, it's going to be a good one, I think, to see these two going at it in battle. I'm interested as well to see what happens with Dawson and Derbyshire at the front of the field. They are clear and away from everybody else. You know, no one really is going to be in contention. Well, no one else really in that group is going to be in contention. You know, 9 seconds between, well, 8.5 between Derbyshire and Hilden at the moment. But yeah, Derbyshire's playing this very coy at the moment, isn't he? He's not really going for too many moves in the way that we'd expect from Sam Derbyshire, but he's playing the long game here, as you kind of have to in these 1 hour long races. And 34 minutes to go. The longer you run in this race, the better it's going to be in terms of how long you have to stop into the box. And Sam Derbyshire is looking like he's in a fantastic position. Clerc can't quite overtake Hilton either. And we're getting these almost duos forming. First and second, third and fourth, fifth and sixth. And we saw Hoyland and Gortel for 7th and 8th. They have swapped places though. I'm sorry for talking about these two because we may have missed that.
Van Gortel passed by Hoyland. That's absolutely fine. We can jump back and see how that one happened. Let's do that immediately before anything else changes. As this through the Arabiatas, yes it is, uphill. Do the right-hander. Hoyland gets the power down nicely. Is he going to catch Van Gortel out on the inside? Yes, he is. Carries massive overspeed there. Gets his car ahead before they turn into the corner. No defence needed by either driver there. Hoyland up another place, doing very well, having gained 5 at the start. Sorry, 5 since the start of the race. Nothing shy about these two drivers to talk about, though, Dara. Plenty to say, of course. We have first in the championship, leading 5th in the championship, and P2 at the moment. Sam Derbyshire, of course, won in the opening round of the season, so both of these guys have quite a bit of pedigree in this series. I think that's Rob Smith slightly getting in the way. It won't compromise Sam Derbyshire's exit too much, but he does get a little bit of understeer on the way out of that corner, taking a little trip through the gravel. What is interesting is the fastest times by the pair of these drivers are only 1/100th of a second away from one another, and on the previous lap, that is when Andrew Dawson put in his fastest lap time, a 1:45.3, just 3/10 slower than his best effort in qualifying. He'll still have a decent amount, maybe 20 litres or so left in that fuel tank for Dawson, so he's done very well to put that kind of lap time in race conditions. But it was also that their last lap time, Sarah, was split by only 5/100ths of a second prior to this one, so the two leaders of the race going toe to toe. And I think it's safe to say that Sam Derbyshire is not getting any fuel saving out of this at all. First time this season we've been able to say that, really. P2's been quite comfortable so far in this championship, but it looks as though Dawson is keeping him honest, and Derbyshire is keeping Dawson honest as well. No room for error, but they're both pushing to the limit at the moment. Just about to cross over into the halfway stage of the race. We'll have pit stops coming in shortly, but for the time being, the front two in this order, best part of 10 seconds clear from the rest of the field.
Yep, and they have really been the class of the field over the course of the evening so far, and it's good to see that we have got 2 more names to factor into title consideration. Of course, they're already at the top of the order, but these points that they're going to bring home tonight are going to be ever so crucial in their hunt for their respective championships, of course. And it is great to see so many drivers regularly getting themselves towards the front of the order. Meanwhile, Dennis Curler, Shane Cotton going at it, and Curler has just, I believe, made his way through, or has he? He's going to lose out maybe to Rob Mackay, who is just in front. That's who he did lose out to. Shane Cotton's going to be on the inside line and may take advantage as well. Great tussle down here, even for the smaller points in the Premier class. Good to see some battling.
It is, absolutely then. So who is that? Mackay is leading still with that damage on the front. He'll get that fixed, I'm sure, when it comes to the pit stop sequence. He is under a little bit of pressure now. Down the inside goes Dennis Curler. Gets that one done nicely. Mackay in that 17 Mercedes, not really feeling the need to defend that one all too strongly. Shane Cotton will be looking to capitalise on that one as well. Andrew Fairley is still in behind Rob Smith at the moment. Has he been into the pit lane? Yes, he has. Fairly into the pit lane twice, and as you said earlier, Dara, he hasn't done fairly well so far, has he?
It's 1-1 now.
It's a bad one.
we're tired. We'll have to try and, well, we're going to have to find another way to fit one in at some point. We've got half an hour, we'll do it. But yeah, it's not been a good evening for Andrew, Jan Hilden, sorry, really flying the flag at the moment. We'll see if Andrew can, gain anything. He may have to depend on if people make mistakes and drop well away from contention in front, but it's better to stay in the race and possibly pick up those points than go out and lose what could be a really important dozen or so by the end of the season. Critchwell to the inside line on Josh Taylor, and these two Mustangs have been fighting for some time, but Critchwell at the moment has the upper hand.
Absolutely gets that move stuck and defends that position. It looked like it was off the cards going down at turn 1, but he's managed to make it stick, and that's invited Alex Fretwell into the fray. So far, I would guess this is Alex's best position of the season. He's been suffering. He's been on the receiving end of quite a bit of damage throughout the course of this season, bless him. None of it has really been awfully on him, but so far that McLaren looks like it is in good shape. Leon Yarnasu is down there in the pit lane in the Premier class. That may be his first stop being recorded by the Panda Spec Motorsports driver. Gap's beginning to open up a little bit. Sam Darbush has dropped out of that 1 second behind the leader. He's now 1.6 seconds, and Jan Hilden, of course, now outside of the top 10. So things starting to take shape here. This battle between Critchwell and Josh Taylor is the closest that we have on the circuit at the moment. Here's a bit of a question for you, Dara. I believe it's Mr. Macaulay Watkins in the chat is asking what we think the longest straight is. Now, there's a few conditions that I'd like to pose before we have a little think about that one. Are we talking about, pure circuits? Are we talking about street circuits? Are we talking about just in Europe? Are we going to go worldwide? Because there's a few that come to mind, but it depends. If we're going to include Baku, for example, that could be right up there. But if we're going to talk about just normal circuits, surely we're thinking about Mexico, Monza, maybe Fuji could be in there as well. I'd love for someone to find the answer, if that exists. Someone can tell us what the longest straight in motorsports are, but of course Mugello will be part of that list as well.
Yeah, I think I want to know the conditions of this before I make a guess. Before I make another fool of myself. Because are we talking this is a proper straight? Are we talking it's full throttle? Are we talking about the idea that it's there's so many different conditions to this. If it's straight, you've got the UK's longest straight, I believe it's Snetterton, isn't it? Which sounds really crazy. Matt Watkins made a good point about being the Dottinger Hoa. I don't know how long's the straight to Avers. That's what I want to know. Dennis Curler's going to pass James Pallow for P9 down towards Tom, and that move looks like it's relatively easily completed. But back up the inside goes James, and the man from Jersey gets himself back into the top 9, and after momentarily losing it. But yeah, goodness me, and all of that. Macau. There's so many we could go to, but I guess that's not a straight. That's the point I'm making. Yeah,
I will. I'll refrain from giving any more to that one because I don't think I'll ever know the answer. Unless there is an answer, someone can tell us. Who's that off in the foreground there, Dara? We're about to pass him now. Is that Rob Smith? I think it is Rob Smith. At least I recognise that livery, although I don't even see him on the order. Have I been calling out Rob Smith when he's not even in the session?
I think so.
He is there.
Oh, no, he's there.
But that wasn't him because he's just coming through here now. So it's another flatline racing driver in a Mercedes. I'm not quite sure who that is. But anyway, it was someone. And he's safe now. Matt Hoyland, Josh Taylor, and Premier race leader Luke Bailey are in the pits. I promise we're not just staring at a wall. Let's see as Matt Hoyland gets on to the fuel. There's more coming in. Samuel Clark and Hussein Sarakadas, the Ryan Abbott in there as well. I think, has Grant Miller had an issue, or has he already been into the pit lane? He hasn't. So Grant Miller, we've missed that one. He's dropped down to 12th now. We'll have to try and find what happened to him. He hasn't been in the pits, but he's now in P12, and he hasn't, sorry, I've already said he hasn't stopped. So he's definitely had an issue somewhere out there. Owen Seward and Harris, the lead of the race then before the pit stop. Luke Bailey will come out and he will try and stay ahead of whoever was gapping him closest before he went into the pit lane.
Yeah, early pit stops relatively to what we've seen so far this season. Only 35 minutes on an opening stint, just under that. isn't as long as we've almost come to expect from some of our drivers over the course of the season so far. But it's going to be interesting to see what differences that's going to make on our order. I mean, the drivers coming out of the pit lane in the Premier class are putting themselves right into the middle of some of these battles. You know, Sauer Cadesla between Pieva and Vavers, but he's now behind Vavers, or ahead of Vavers. Chopping and changing, there's no tomorrow. Ahead of Vavers, behind Pete Pieva. I'm going to give up. I'm guessing where Hussein Sauer Cadesla is. He's got 3 places in about 30 seconds. But he's down in the mix, that's the point. He's having to battle his way through, which isn't as easy as running up at the front as Owen Seward and Barry Wemben are now, with a little bit of clean air, so that's going to be important. Dawson is into the pit lane this time by as well, of course, race leader in the elite class. Derbyshire stays out, could that be crucial?
Yeah, I was wrong about Miller, apologies for that. I was looking at the wrong column. He has been in the pit lane, and that sees him just 2 seconds behind Luke Bailey. So the battle for the lead in the Premier class still on, but Grant hasn't really been able to capitalise too much coming through that pit stop. Andrew Fairley is chasing down Paul Cowlishaw. This is a battle for 13th and 14th in the elite class, in sort of a space for their own, and Sauer Cadesla in his Ferrari putting pressure on that flatline racing Mercedes then. So as you said there, Dawson makes his way out of the pits now, coming through turn 1. Derbyshire is about 2/3 of the way through the lap. We'll see if he enters the pit lane. Of course, the gap was starting to open up before either of those drivers made their way into the pits. The top 6, the new top 6 in the Premier class head in, as well as Grant Miller and Luke Bailey make their way back toward the front of the order. Then here comes Matt Hoyland again on the back of Luke Van Gotel, not giving him any breathing room. He must have jumped him in the pit lane again, Dara, because he was originally past him, and now the Mercedes is stuck behind that Porsche once again.
Yeah, and it's just not where he wants to be at all. And Luke Van Gotel is going to be defending from Matt Hoyland, you'd think sternly once again. And it's going to be a bit of a tough test for Matt Hoyland to have to negotiate his way around. Derbyshire into the pit lane now. He had a 42-second advantage over Andrew Dawson. Can he come out in the lead? Is he going to have to make the move on circuit? Let's wait and find out, because it's not going to be too long before we get an answer. Kenin as well, Pedro Luis Silva in, means that Plug has stayed out the longest. This is a high guzzler in terms of fuel. A lot of the lap time is spent, with at least some throttle applied to the car. It's not a heavy braking zone circuit, so no surprise that we are seeing those slightly early. But Plug getting more out of this opening stint than anybody else. It's going to pay him dividends by the time he makes his way into the pit lane.
So Derbyshire making his way out. Then it looks as though he might well be ahead of Dawson here, because he was only coming around the final corner. Dawson is going to be incredibly close. Here he is, coming up in the rear view mirror. That's very, very far away. Let's go to the chopper cam instead. Can we see Dawson in behind? No, we can't. He is there. I can hear him. There he is, trailing the Corvette now. So it's a good pit sequence for the Vulcan Motorsports Gold driver. Dawson's got his work cut out for him in the final 22 minutes here. Jack Plug has stayed out for another lap. He's 27 seconds clear of these guys, but will of course come out behind them. Of course, an average pit time of 46 to 48 seconds by all the drivers inside the top 7. So Jack Plug will come out quite a way down the order as things stand, potentially just inside the top 6 if he's lucky. Derbyshire, though, has done exactly what he needed to do. Maybe, Dara, he was conserving a little bit more fuel than we thought. Stationary times for the two of them. Derbyshire was 2 seconds quicker in his pit box than Mr. Andrew Dawson, which might go some way in explaining this overturn of position.
Yeah, almost certainly what made all the difference for Sam Derbyshire to now be into what is a net race lead. Plug, when he comes in, will relinquish that lead, and he comes in perfectly timed just about now. So Derbyshire will lead Dawson second. Bit of a question whether Plug can maybe even get to P3 ahead of Jan Hilden on the strategy. Should easily come out ahead of Lewis Kenyon, there should be no doubt about that. Meanwhile, Graham Vavers fighting away in the Premier class. That is not Hussein Sauer Cadesla right behind him, or is it? Don't believe it is. I believe it's one of the elite drivers coming through. Indeed it will be. Danny Phillips. So my eyes didn't deceive me, but just behind of Sauer Cadesla is Vavers is Sauer Cadesla. Here he is, and now he has a great view of Graham Vavers up in front for P5.
A little bit of understeer there for Sauer Cadesla through the Arrabbiata 2, trying to catch up to the back of that BMW, I believe. He's the only Ferrari that is left out there on the circuit. Two of them, of course, in Callum Ray and Andrea Viella, out toward the start of this race. Sounding awfully stuttery is that Ferrari. I'm not sure, I don't think you can hear that, Dara, but very blippy. That might just be on my end, but unless Sarkodaz is trying some new trick that he's got up his sleeve. Chasing down the BMW though, it will be a good finish for Sarkodaz if he can get there, of course. He's not in the top 12 in the order, which leads me to believe that he probably hasn't had a result of this quality so far. Of course, led most of the way around the Hockenheim ring in the pre-season round, but since then hasn't been able to repeat that. Then in comes Danny Phillips and Paul Caldershaw into the pit lane. Matt Hoyland still all over the back of Luke Van Gortel as Andrew Fairley puts his Mustang up the inside of that McLaren. I believe that's Liam Yarnasu in the Premier class as the lead class driver makes his way by through 13 and 14. Quite a bold place to make a move, but he's made it stick nonetheless, and the battle inside the top 6 in the elite class still continues. Hoyland chasing him through once again. The Arabiatas, he's got a much better exit. Is he going to send it in the same place that we saw him earlier? Just about skims the rear end, and that is so close for Hoyland. He's had to bail out of that one, and that gives Luke Van Gortel a bit of breathing room.
Yeah, exploring new parts of the circuit he didn't necessarily know were there. Is Matt Hoyland just trying to avoid going into the back of Luke Van Gortel. Did well in that regard, but he's in P8, a difficult position for him to be in, really. I don't think he'll be overly overjoyed with having to sit behind. Might as well at this point. We spent enough hours together that we know what we're talking about, right? But yeah, Hoyland, he's not going to be happy about sticking behind Luke Van Gortel. I think he'd like to dispatch of that Porsche, because you've got Petrol Silva not a million miles up in front, and by sticking behind Van Gortel, it means that Critchell, just in behind, could start to apply a bit of pressure as well. So a lot riding on this move for Hoyland.
It is, absolutely. Then as more cars come out of the pit lane, let's ride on board with Sam Derbyshire, who leads this one through the first sector now, entering sector 2, heading down through 6 and 7. This is not the first time that Mr. Derbyshire has led a race, of course. As we've said already, he finished the first race on the top step of the podium. He's been there before. He hasn't been back on the podium since then, and he'll be wanting to do his best to hold off on Andrew Dawson. Jan Hilden is very far out of the question at the moment, but does it look, is it that, yes, it looks as though Andrew Dawson has some traffic to contend with. That's the number 15 somewhere. I'm not quite sure which driver that is in that Mercedes. No, in P29, that'll be Rob Smith once again getting himself out the way. I wonder how much time that cost Dawson in the dirty air of that fellow Mercedes. Last lap times, Sam Derbyshire was just 0.02 of a second faster, so they're still going tooth and nail, but with that 2-second gap now that Dawson has to overcome, if the lap times aren't improved by him, he's going to struggle to make up any of that time in the final 17 minutes.
Yeah, and time really has evaporated from us. This race feels like it's gone so quickly that we've only really got about a quarter of an hour left to run in this race. Lap time still hovering about that 105-second mark, and with 17 minutes to go, we're only going to be looking at another what is 1,000, so about 10 laps or so left to go in this race. Jan Hilden not doing anything to close in on Andrew Dawson. Plug maybe looking to close in on him, but lost 2/10 that time by, and it's got Plug to be wary of Lewis Kenyon in behind. That's in the battle for P4 in the class. Here is Derbyshire, and this is a view that he will not want to see. Traffic. They will get out of his way, but it's just going to lose him a little bit of time. That time that he gained to Andrew Dawson, and he's got to be careful that it's not evaporating quickly.
Well, we've got to remember, for every car that Derbyshire passes, he'll know that Dawson has to do the same thing, but it's about when and where he passes each of those drivers. If you catch one on the apex, that's going to really stint your run through the next couple of corners. If you can get them on the straight, then you might be all right. Remember, in this series that we don't have the blue flag rule that you might see in Formula 1. Drivers are not obliged to just dive out of the way of the leaders coming through, but they cannot challenge or defend going into a corner. If Derbyshire decided to put his wheel up the inside of the McLaren ahead, the McLaren must leave him room at really the expense of his own race. If he's going to go around the outside like there, it would be wise for the McLaren in behind to let him through before they turn in to that corner to risk any unnecessary contact. Managed well has Derbyshire there. He's actually extended the gap now 2.2 seconds down to Andrew Dawson, who, as I said just half a lap ago, will have to manage the same traffic all over again. And as Dawson exits the corner, he's got through on one or two of them. He's still has one more driver to... In fact, no, it doesn't, Darren. I think that is Derbyshire, the next car ahead, a little bit far up the road to see, and it's going to happen all over again as the traffic really starts to impede these drivers. Let's take a look at the track map in some detail. Look at that. They'll both be pleased to know that once they've got through, and that's the oh God, that was close. Well read by Dawson there. It was very, very difficult to predict where that McLaren might have ended up, but he slowed down appropriately. That's cost him so much time, though. That's cost him a second and a half, if not more, by the time we go through the next sector beam. That will update, and we'll see what the live gap is, but that might have just sealed the deal for Derbyshire if he can keep it in a straight line. I was going to say, once they pass this cluster of cars, there's not too many more that they have to contend with, but it's still going to take them a good few laps to get through them all. As it stands, 3.7 seconds to gap now, a bit more of a breathing room for Derbyshire to deal with.
Yeah, it was not pretty for Andrew Dawson. He lost about that second and a half, as you said, and he's now going to have to find out extra time now with only 14 minutes of this race left to run. Not being an easy chase for Andrew Dawson, who of course controlled the first half of this race. Didn't really have to defend at all, but after the pit stops, put in a difficult position of being in P2, and now has to contend with that, even with the traffic as well. And you can see on the track map as well, it's not going to get a whole lot easier. Sam Derbyshire is away a little bit though. He's got a lot of room to drive into, so there's only a couple of cars for Andrew Dawson to get through before he has a nice bit of breathing room, but it's just not really what you want to have to deal with when you're fighting for a race win.
Oh, Luke Bailey handing over the lead of the race to Grant Miller by taking too much curb. Getting a little bit greedy was that Mercedes, and that is Miller, the pole man in the Premier Class, back inheriting the lead of that race. And we've got some terrible news in chat, Jara. Mr. Toby Hardiak, of course, championship leader, who wasn't having the best time of it out there. Still just about, I think he was P13 or P15 last time we left him. He's had a disconnection from the server, so that is Hardiak out, and he will not be scoring points in this one. He's got Kostrick, who was 58 points behind him coming into this race tonight. Now, I don't see Kostrick anywhere, in fact anywhere at all inside the top 20, so that's good news for Hardiak. But John Ludbrook, he's definitely been out there on the track at some point tonight. He's also out of the race. And then it's Grant Miller, the man who currently leads the race, who is the best part of 104 points behind. So with Miller leading this one and Hardiak out of the race, he will hold on to the championship lead. But by my calculations, the things stand as it is. It'll be a 4-point difference next week between Hardiak and Grant Miller.
Yep, that is what it's looking like it's going to be at the moment. But yeah, not good news for Toby Hardiak. But it's clearly shown in the last couple of weeks that he has the pace for winning races. So it just has to be, or have good enough internet on some of these evenings to put himself in those positions once again. But he is definitely one of the fastest drivers in the division and has those points on the board, which will give him a little bit of comfort going into next week at Imola, of course. Imola, right? Next week, I'm not going crazy. Or is it Monza? Right?
It is Imola. It is Imola.
It is Imola. Okay, I had a moment there. Said Imola and then thought, oh, could be wrong. It was one of two. Got it right first. I should have backed myself. But there you go. It's Imola next week. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, it's not far really from Mugello to get to Imola, just across the eastern Tuscan hills as you get towards the plains. It really is only about an hour's drive. It's not far at all. Anyway, enough about that. Lewis Hammond is trying to fight with Pete Paeva. Pete down the inside, and we'll keep that Aston Martin ahead for a moment. But Lewis Hammond will have the inside line towards turns 2 and 3. Can he consolidate the position through 3? No, he can't. Pete comes back at him, and he will just about keep ahead. No, it won't. There's contact because Pete spun through the corner, and that's
damage.
The front end gone off of Lewis's car. Oh, disaster for both of them. All of us, Rob Smith is sniffing a P14 and Andrew Larkman a P15 as they battle away for 16th.
No flag, no meatball flag for Lewis Hammond. So if he can coax that car around for the next 10 minutes, he might be able to bring it in. But he is going to be bleeding lap time out there on the circuit, especially in this part of the track through 6, 7, 8 and 9. It requires so much downforce to carry the speed up and over the hill. It's going to be very difficult to do with the state of that machine. Of course, I completely forgot to make this point. With Mr. Miller leading the race and potentially coming into next week just 4 points the difference, Toby reminds me, of course, that it's the two Phoenix Racing drivers. So he jokes that it might be a nice championship battle between the two teammates. And of course, you could quote the team boss, and it will be Phoenix Racing Blue versus Phoenix Racing Red. So 2 of the sister teams under the same umbrella, led of course by the smile on screen now, Grant Miller, will be quite an interesting little scrap that we might have on our hands as we go into the second half of the season.
Yeah, that'll be fun, won't it, as we get towards the latter races of the championship, towards the North American and South American races as well. That is going to be a whole lot of fun. But yeah, it's just nice to have a championship set up in this way, that we have lots of names that we have to be thinking about that are going to be contending in the final couple of weeks and races in this championship, which is exactly the kind of championship that we want to see, particularly for the 10th season of this fantastic series. Less than 10 minutes to go. I mean, this race has flown by, realistically. We've got, what, 6 laps to go for Sam Derbyshire to try and hold on, for Jan Rosberg to try not to hit the back of Thiago Reis in nearly a collision between the two of them, but they keep it out of each other and they continue in their battle for P18-19. Nice little patchwork of McLarens and Porsches down there at the back of the Premier class.
Yeah, Jan's done well to repair that McLaren. It was pretty stricken a little bit earlier on as the 93 moves over to defend the inside line going into the next set of corners. He might have to defend once again because Rosberg will probably get quite a good run out of this one as they head downhill for the first time on this lap through turn 6 and 7. Let's ride on board with Rosberg again and see how he goes. A little handful of understeer for the Swedish driver as he chases after this Porsche, and it's now all eyes front and back up the hill. Running a little bit wide goes the Porsche, not able to hit the apex on the inside of turn 9, but Rosberg not really able to capitalise on that one, carrying the speed up the hill. It's a little bit deep once again by the 93, looking in his mirrors maybe a little bit more than he should, and Rosberg gets the power down. They are going to go side by side going into turn 12, but he's going to be on the unfavoured outside line. He's going to look to go all the way around the outside. No move on for a switchback, and it looks as though he might have got enough to warrant some space up the inside. Rosberg, yes he has. Brilliant move by the McLaren. Gets that one stuck. It looked difficult to go around the outside of 12. Didn't quite get it done in that corner, but he poised himself nicely through 13 and 14 to get that move settled by 15, and that is Rosberg up into P18. And Thiago Reis immediately under pressure from nobody. It's Luc van Goortel under blue flags, I think it is. Yes, it is.
5 laps to go now for these guys after Sam Derbyshire crossed the line with about 8 minutes left to go in the race. So it is 5 to go, and that means that there's not too many more chances to make moves in this race. Very dramatic between Pedro Luis da Silva and Luc van Goortel at the moment, not too far behind. Pedro is just about in front at the moment, needs to try and negotiate his way through this other little bit of traffic in the form of Barry Wenman. And when they get through Barry, it should be Wesley Van Ren. Am I correct in saying
this is Jan Rosberg ahead? Jan Rosberg.
Oh, it's 66. Yes, sorry, I saw the number, I thought it was a 56, it is the 66. Which is where there would be a little bit more breathing room up in front, because Barry Wimmer in the 56 is right behind Wesley Van Ren, which is why it obviously couldn't be him. But this is a good battle for P6 in this race. I mean, Pedro and Luke have been going at it all race long. Good to see that they are still keeping this one going right towards the checkered flag.
Yeah, Rosberg's done well to let these guys through, but how is that going to dictate Thiago Reis's recapitalisation of that position? Hasn't happened for it. Jan has done well to hold on to that one. Now, Jan Hilden was under loads of pressure there for a moment by Tjeerd Plug. He was within a tenth of a second. I would imagine that was probably going through turns 8 and 9. That was about 30 seconds ago, and now they head through 13 and 14. So Tjeerd Plug looking for a last gasp effort to get himself up onto the podium. And we have a couple of other battles. Shane Cotton is looking to get himself into 11th, going side by side. 2 McLarens, that is, going through turn 1. All of a sudden, Dara, the track is coming alive again for these drivers in the final 6 minutes. Fuel will be low, tyres will be struggling a little bit, albeit in these cooler temperatures they may have been able to save some rubber to go for a bit of an aggressive style toward the end of this race. But Tjeerd Plug not hanging around. He looks to go late on the brakes and around the outside. The Mustang is at a little bit of door banging. No, it's not. They've held and left each other enough room, but now the Mustang is going to be stranded on that outside line and forced to go the long way round, which becomes the inside again. Great battle between the pair of them, but it looks as though Tjeerd Plug has got the run. It's not said and done yet, though, because the Mustang still has... No, he doesn't. He doesn't have the inside line. Thought this was turn 6. It's turn 4. Now the Lamborghini is going to be ahead, and he's going to be holding onto that position as they head downhill towards 6.
Yeah, 4 laps to try and defend here as they work their way now in towards 6 and 7, flowing all the time in towards 8 and 9 as well. And Jan Hilton's going to have to try and find a little bit of something extra to get back past Plug, because he's been looking like he was going to make that move for some time. And now the former champion is in front and looking to pull away a touch as well. Lewis Kenyon's only a couple of seconds off the back of Jan Hilton as well. They don't count him out for a possible P4 as well. Luke Van Gortel dropping off that, or not dropping off, I should say, because he's been in that battle with Petrolus Silva, of course, but a little bit further back and probably not involved in that battle. Hoyland could get involved in the battle there as well for P7. You've also got the battle between Seward and Van Ren and Wenman for P7 in the Premier class. There's so much left to contend with in the final stages of this race. And side by side, Larkman's going to have to try and overtake Lewis Hammond, whose front end is still not attached to the car, as it hasn't been for quite some time. But they've got to be careful. Luke Van Gortel and Petrolus Silva coming up right behind them.
Yeah, there's flash of the headlights once again by Luke Van Gortel, not wanting to give up this position to Pedro Luis da Silva, which he's worked so hard to maintain. That Axis Sim Sports machine is going to have to go around the outside going into turn 1 to get past the damaged McLaren, who will take up the inside line. Another flash of the headlights by Van Gortel to signal that he may well want to come through, of course. Is he under blue flags? There will be, won't they? So Van Gortel's got to be careful here. Gets awfully close to the back of that McLaren. Still flashing the headlights is Van Gortel. Not happy at all that this damaged, albeit blue flag damaged McLaren is slowing him up, but he'll be pleased to know that Larkman has got himself in between him and Pedro Luis da Silva, so at least he's not being held up too much, and it looks as though the 114 has now been set free to get through. Same cannot be said, sadly, for Luis da Silva. That's right on board with him. See how he handles this lapped traffic as they head through the fast and flowing 6 and 7. That's going to be difficult, and look at that, the pace difference is unbelievable between the damaged Premier driver and the rapid Elite driver, and he's only just got himself through. That's set free Luke Van Gortel ahead, and that might be all said and done for the moment for Pedro Luis da Silva.
And it looks like it's going to be set and done in that regard, which is what Pedro would have wanted in his quest to get P6, but still, that just looks like the way it is going to go. 3 minutes remain on the clock. Critchell has received
a black disqualification, I think.
Or is that a drive-through penalty flag? Or is
no,
it completely out of
drive-through is a.
I thought disqualification was a straight black flag, right?
I'm not sure, mate, to be honest, but I don't see him going to the pit lane. He's not. Yes, he is. Thomas Critchell. Here he is. Let's see where he is. No, is that maybe like? It's not a disconnection flag, is it? He's not on the track at all, so it looks like Critchell has had a moment somewhere, and he's out of this race, which promotes a couple of drivers a few extra positions as we enter the final stages of this race. Out the way goes Lewis Hammond as the drivers make their way through. It's who was that? Is this Owen Seward? Yes, no, it's Matt Hoyland, the 123, going around the outside. Here he is. Yes, so difficult at the moment for Hammond to bring that machine back. He's got lots of traffic trying to get through. This is what I was trying to find with Wesley Van Ren all over the back of what was Owen Seward, but now they've got Andrew Fairley, the Elite driver, in P11 in between the pair of them. So Seward on for his best result of the season for the Vulcan Fasteners team, and he's got Andrew Fairley in that Mustang looking to go around the outside. Owen's got to be careful not to compromise his exit here to allow Van Ren to run into turn 1. He's not going to have many opportunities to do it. Owen has to do what he can to defend for the next 1 minute here before the end of the race.
Yep, and we are going to get towards the white flag relatively soon. I think these guys have 2 more to go, but here comes Van Ren on the back of Owen Seward with another car to factor into this as well. 3 wide towards turn number 1 here. Oh my goodness me, not exactly what you want right at the end of an evening and right after a very dramatic race. A little bit of contact there, and it's going to push Wesley Van Ren out wide. Owen Seward will hold on to P7 for the time being. But they've got another, nearly 2 laps to complete. Sam Darvish has just about come across the line. He has found the white flag. He started his final lap of the race.
Yeah, we're right on board with Mr. Derbyshire as he makes his way around on his final lap. I think that 3 wide scenario ended about the best as any of them could have hoped for. A little bit of contact, but at least none of them were spun around in that instance. Graham Bavers now having to defend from Hussein Saraka-Desla, who is not shy about putting that Ferrari in places that it doesn't necessarily belong, and he's going to look to try and hang it around the outside of the BMW, who will fight back, but Saraka-Desla will take that inside line going through into turn 12. This is a battle for 5th in class. Big points on offer between the 85 and the number 8, and it looks like the number 8's done it for the time being. He's got himself through, I think. Will they go one more time? Yes, they will. They're not under blue flags, so these drivers will go around one last time. Derbyshire has just crossed into the second half of the circuit. He'll be nearly finished in just under a minute's time, but a great move by Saraka-Desla, first to put pressure on the BMW where it didn't really belong, but then he stuck it out, hung it around the outside, and managed to get that position.
Yeah, it's a really good battling right towards the end of this race. It's been such a hard fought one, hasn't it? It's been nitty gritty at times, but it's all going to come down to this in the end. Rhodes just going to hold on ahead of Shane Cotton there. But you know what a race it's been from Sam Derbyshire. He has had difficulties, hasn't he, over the course of the season so far with being able to get the points on the board. But great qualifying, great racecraft in the first half of the race, and he fully deserves this win, doesn't he?
Here he comes then, taking the checkered flag first. As a flash of the headlights and a little wag of the tail there as he crosses the line to take his second victory of the season. He opened his account with maximum points in the first round, and he's brought home 100 points for him and his team tonight. It's been a first, a fifth, a 13th and a first position tonight for the 166 entry. He will be very pleased with that. Andrew Dawson led for a while and took that pole position, not able to convert, but that will keep the run inside the top 4 going for Mr. Dawson. He finished second, fourth, first and second. Been a very good start to the season. A little bit of an outsider as well, so to speak, especially in qualifying. Hasn't been Dawson's best so far this season, but he's had the most consistent results at the front of the order. That should see him maintain the lead at the front of the standings. Matt Hoyland crossing the line so close in behind Pedro Luis da Silva, in the end not able to get any more places, gained 4 in the order. And here comes Grant Miller-Dara taking the checkered flag in the Premier class.
Yeah, great result for Grant Miller again. He made that move after Luke Bailey made a big mistake. However, he's not going to mind about how it comes. He's not going to mind that he lost 6/10 on that final lap because he's won the race. He'll take all the points home. Ryan Abbott's then P3. Great result for him. Very quiet race. Long way behind the top 2, but a long way ahead of everybody else as well.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen very much of Ryan so far this season. I may have just missed him, but we definitely haven't seen that Aston Martin before, so he's either changed cars or he's arriving late into the championship, throwing a spanner in the works and taking what I think is his first podium of the season. Luke Bailey gets back on the horse after a DNF in round 2, missing round 3 and a win in the opening round. He'll be happy to bring home points good enough in P2, and I'm looking forward to speaking to a few of these drivers. Some new race winners on the cards, of course, for us this season, and good to see some new drivers up there on the podium. The entire grid has crossed the line. We had about 10 guys who failed to finish. We'll cover them very shortly in the race results, but Dara, very good by Derbyshire. Disappointing for Dawson, but he'll still be happy where he finished. Great news for Bailey and Miller as well after they shared a brilliant battle.
Yeah, some happy storylines I think definitely going to come out of this race, and some drivers that are going to be feeling pretty pleased, and they'll head to Imola with the short trip to Imola with I think a real confidence boost, which is critical at this part of the season.
It is then, so just before we head into the 5th round of the season, into the halfway point, we'll take you through the race results, starting first as always with the Elite class. Sam Derbyshire then started on the front row of the grid in P2 behind Andrew Dawson, but in the end saw out maximum points. The 166 takes the top step of the podium for the Vulcan Motorsports Gold team by 3.5 seconds over our pole man, the 194 Mercedes for Sim Coach, Mr. Andrew Dawson, who will likely extend his margin at the front of the elite standings. Tjek Plug got himself up past Jan Hilden in the latter stages of that race to convert a P3 finish for him and his team as well. It's been a good start to the season for former champion Plug, yet to finish outside the top 4 and on the podium for the second time so far this season. Jan Hilden will finish in 4th ahead of Lewis Kenyon, who does well. Dara, we said about him right at the start of the broadcast, hasn't been able to get himself inside the top 6 so far this season. It's a top 5 for the Vulcan Motorsports Gold entry this time around. Luc van Goortel will finish 6th after a difficult race and probably a frustrating one for him in his battle with Pedro Luis da Silva. Matt Hoyland and Josh Taylor, let me say, a good result for Matt Hoyland. I think his best of the season. That might give him a little bit more hope to stay in that Mercedes for a little bit longer. Josh Taylor and Alex Fretwell, good result for Fretwell. I don't think he's finished inside the top 10 so far this season for the Racing League Hub. Congratulations to the number, well, let's say it's number 40. It's changed again, Dara. I changed his number to 152 before the start of the race, and Paul Cowlishaw seems to have nicked that off him. So again, apologies for that one, Alex. I checked it yesterday, but it's gone wrong again. Andrew Fairley will take 11th, and Danny Phillips inside the top 12. It will be Jean Breitenbach who finishes ahead of Paul Cowlishaw and Thomas Critchell, who had an issue toward the end of the race. I think he'll still score points, having finished only 3 laps down, but we'll have to try and figure out what happened to the 1:02. Jamie Foster finishing 10 laps down, unlikely to bring home any points. Look at that, just top 15 finishing that race. It's Foster ahead of Hayden Miller, disappointing for him. Justin Eloff had a bad start in the opening lap, picking up damage, unable to recover his race. He finishes in 18th, ahead of Andrew Viella and Callum Ray, and I believe that is all in the early class. Yes, it is.
Then, of course, over in the Premier class, it was Grant Miller who won out by just under a second ahead of Luke Bailey. Great race in the end between those two, but Miller, the Scotsman, is the winner. Ryan Abbott's quiet race for him, but he won't care. He finished P3. Fantastic result for the Aston Martin driver for Team Nubish. But the 25 will be picking up a lot of points here this evening. Samuel Clark and Hussein Sarakadesla, 4th and 5th. Great results for them. But again, I think those drivers are the kinds of drivers that we'd expect to be picking up good points, but where they're going to be in the championship coming into the season is going to hinge on results like this. Graham Vavers, P6 out of Owen Seward, Wesley Van Ren, Barry Wenman, and Rob Mackay. 10 drivers within 53 seconds of our race winner. Of course, the following drivers were a lap down, but weren't necessarily a lap down to their own class leader. They were a lap down to our overall race winner. Michael Rhodes, Shane Cotton, and Liam Yanis inside the top 13 with Jan Osberg, and Brazilian Pete Paeva inside the top 15. Andrew Larkman was ahead of Lewis Hammond and Tiago Reiser in the top 18, with Rob Smith and Dennis Curler picking up the final points paying position. Danny Ware and Andre Muntian 21st and 22nd. Muntian had a couple of issues towards the end of that race. And is there any more off the bottom of that, Joe, or is it just the 22?
Sorry,
there is more. Oh, goodness me, there is more. James Paolo 3 laps down, and then the drivers that didn't see the checkered flag: Andrew Fellows, Toby Hardiak after his connection, Marcel Breitenbach, and John LeBrook.
Yeah, Toby Hardiak, of course, championship leader, should still hold on to that lead, but it'll be close between him and Grant Miller going in to the 5th round. So then, let's have a look at who we've got in the booth and who we can bring in to speak to. I think both of our race winners are in there, so we'll have a quick word with the pair of them, and then we'll speak to Mr. Andrew Dawson over at SimCoach. So let's go ahead and do what we need to do before we speak to these drivers. And we are good to go, Dara.
Yeah, it's great that we're going to be able to get a word from a couple of our winning drivers. Firstly, Sam Derbyshire, overall race winner here this evening, and Sam can join us now. But first of all, Sam, can you hear us first of all?
I can.
Welcome back into the booth, Mr. Derbyshire. First of all, big congratulations to you. That was a hell of an effort. Of course, mostly done in the pit stops, and you managed to stay with the race leader. But first of all, how does that feel? Tell us how it is to, of course, battle with Mr. Dawson, who we know is a very competitive driver, but this time you brought home your 2nd race win of the season. Must feel great.
Yeah, it's good. I always love benchmarking myself against Andy, so it's always great racing against him. I always expect a fair battle and a bit of a tactical one, because you just know that I'm not going to get past him. So on track, especially with the dirty air going through the middle sector, it's really hard to follow. So I just had to save that fuel and try and do him in the pits, which kind of worked.
Yeah, and talk us through that strategy, because, I mean, I talked a little bit on broadcasting, if you watch back, you'll hear it, about last week at Portimao, because you had the difficulty on lap 1, where you spun around and got pushed all the way down the order. But the pace you showed across the rest of the race meant that, you gained to the leaders over a half an hour period while overtaking some cars. You had some really, really strong pace. Did any of that carry over into this week? Did you feel any of that really good feeling that you had in the car, particularly in that first stint, knowing that you could sit behind, save a bit more fuel, and then get get Andy on the strategy?
I mean, I was pretty. Last week, I've kind of figured something out in the past week with the setup of the car, because since the last update, quite a few things have changed. So it's been a bit trial of error, and then this week, I managed to get the perfect setup for the car that I could just push, and all the high-speed corners I can coast around and save fuel rather than being on throttle. And I think that's what's done it for me. So yeah, really big.
So, Sam, you're, of course, the first multi-race winner in the Elite Class this season, coming into tonight in P5. My quick maths, given the fact that Ignis wasn't here, Hayden didn't have the best result, I think that'll probably put you inside the top 3. As we're at the halfway stage of the season, we see the top 12 in the Elite Class littered with Vulcan drivers. It's pretty difficult maybe to manage having so many of you guys around, but how does it feel to know that, you've put yourself back in good form, coming into the top 3? Of course, you've got to maybe deal with Mr. Plurg in his Lamborghini, but all of you Vulcan drivers will be looking ahead to poor old lonely Mr. Dawson, trying to do what he can at the front of the order.
Yeah, I mean, luckily there's not really any inter-team issues. We're all really get on really well, and it's we talked throughout the whole race, all of us, discussing strategy and what we're doing, and hyping each other up and building each other up. I think it's a really positive environment. But yeah, Andy is a force of nature. Let's put it that way.
He absolutely is, absolutely. Then, so just one last question about the sort of. I want to see how your impressions are on the format that we've had. Of course, it looked like it was slightly. Well, it looked like it was very, very good conditions out there. We've seen a few circuits get a little bit darker as things go on, but I think it's going pretty well. I think the track conditions feel good. It maybe lets you guys push these cars a little bit more, and we've got a good selection of tracks coming up. Of course, Imola coming up next week. We head to Canada in not so long, and then that run through the American circuits before the end of the season. So are there any standout circuits that you're looking forward to arriving to, or you're just taking them all 1 week at a time?
Probably the run of COTA, Sebring and Road America is probably going to be a strong outing for the Corvette, so I'd expect some decent results around there. I'm not sure about the next 2 tracks, let's put it that way, so I could be P10 next week, so keep your eyes on it.
Yeah, good. Well, we certainly will, mate. We certainly will. So, good stuff. Congratulations once again, of course. And as you know, we always like to give the guys a chance to give a shout-out to anyone before we let them go. So if you'd like to do that now, go ahead, and then we'll bring in our second race winner.
Yeah, just a big shout out to SimCoach, and if you ever, after any setups, make sure you come to SimCoach. So.
Yes, very good, very good, of course. Series sponsor as well, so we have options in the channel for anyone who's interested in getting any information. Of course, Mr. Sam Derbyshire is a prime example of that. I mean, I'm sure you were quick anyway, but if you've been getting lessons from SimCoach, you're beating them out there on track, so it must be working. Yeah,
it is, but I appreciate speaking to me tonight, and enjoy the rest of your evening, gents.
Good stuff, mate. Thanks so much. Hopefully we'll see you again back in the comms booth in the near future.
Right. Thanks, Sam, to get him in. Not our only race winner, of course, tonight. Other one was in that Premier class, and it was Grant Miller, the number 80. He joins us now. Grant, oh, sorry, dragged you in.
Wrong time there.
Dragged his hands. You can definitely hear us first.
I was mid-chat there. Apologies.
That's all good, Grant. It happens all the time, mate. So first of all, welcome into the booth for the first time this season. It's a cracking way to get you in, of course. You qualified on pole position. You had a little bit of an issue in the opening lap, dropping that position to Luke, but in the long run, you managed to get it back. Luke made that slight mistake in the first sector. You were ready to capitalise. It must feel good to get yourself on the top step of the podium.
It feels great. I've had an absolutely fantastic week so far. I think I can count off tracks less than 10 for the whole week. And Tuesday night, well, we had a Monday night team practice. That went well. Tuesday night practice league went better than well. I think I hit a 45.6, which was about, 6-7 tenths faster than I did in quali tonight. I don't know what happened tonight. Everything was just slow. But yeah, felt really good, comfortable, sitting behind Luke for what felt like an eternity. And a bit like season 8, where I was in Evos in the Mustang, I just started getting into my rhythm and counting his off tracks, and I was like, "That's 2," and then that's another 2, right? Okay, and then I thought he's gonna push this off the track too much. I've just got to be close enough that when he does, I'm there, and that's pretty much how it worked out.
Yeah, no, it's not a bad evening's worth of racing, is it, Grant, to go away with a race winner? And clearly it's been a good week for you overall. Is there anything you can carry through from this week into Imola next week? Because, of course, lots of similarities in the circuit. Well, I say that. I say lots of similarities in terms of the characteristics of not wanting to pick up too many off-tracks and the risks of doing so.
Imola, I don't have much favour with Imola. The only time I've driven it was in the Mustang in the wet. I think that was last season. It might have even been the McLaren in the wet last season. And I went nowhere. Well, I went backwards very quickly. So no, I have no love with Imola whatsoever. This track and Algarve and Zandvoort have been really nice flowing tracks that you get a nice kind of a rhythm going on those. Imola with that wonky chicane down at the bottom, and then the one at the top of Variante Alta, I can't get any of them, so it's going to be another week's worth of practice. But a bit like season 8, I spent quite a bit of time practicing this one, knowing the track and knowing it hadn't changed, getting a setup from one of the teammates, Jason, who's been absolutely fantastic at helping with the setup, and there we go. That's what happens. It worked.
That's very good.
Imola's a shocker for me, I'm afraid to say. You'll find out next week.
Well, maybe not, mate. If you've got enough time to practice, you never know what's going to happen. But good news for you is there's still plenty of opportunities to bring home some points. So your fellow driver, of course, in the Phoenix Racing Blue team, Toby Hardiak, leading the championship coming into tonight. Sadly for him, I'm sure you know had a disconnection. So by my maths, that should put you in P2 in the championship, just 4 points behind him coming into next week. So let's pretend for a second, Grant, that you're not going to fail around Imola and that you two might have a great battle across the hour. How do you think that'll go between the two of you, of course, coming from the same garage?
Well, although we're in the same overall team, I'm in Phoenix Red.
Of course.
And he's in Phoenix Blue.
So gloves are off.
No, there are some nice team orders, but no, a lot of these guys that have just started the season, they're absolutely smashing it in each of their divisions, and we're all just sort of encouraging one another to find pace and try different things. So no, other than not to take one another off, nope, they can do whatever they want, however they want. But I think Graham is, I think he got a 6th tonight. Graham Vevers is in Toby's team on blue. And then I've forgotten, actually. there's that many of them. I think it's Josh Taylor. I could be wrong.
No, you're right. No, you're right. I've got it in front of me. It's Taylor, Stewart, and Paul in Racing Red.
Yeah, and then Shane, who is in this class, is in blue. So that's that little group. So yeah, I didn't know about Toby's disconnection. I saw it disconnect and I thought I saw him reconnect. So there was quite a few people blinking, and I didn't know if there was an accident or if that was just one of these iRacing things, because there was an update today. So I didn't know what had happened, so I've still got to catch up with the team. I haven't seen anything yet.
Good stuff, mate. Well, that sounds very good. Very promising for the team as well, and it'll be very good to see how you and Toby do battle this time next week. So best of luck in all the preparation for Imola next week. And before we let you go, if you'd like to give a shout out to anybody, you can go ahead and do that now. Then we're going to go and jump over to speak to our sim coach driver at the front of the elite class.
So a big thank to everybody in the team that's joined this season. Thank you to Jason for all the time and effort on the setup, and also to our sponsor, RS Workshop Equipment. So thank you, Robin, for that one, and also BTS Fitness, who are on board this season again. So really good to have these guys, and hopefully we'll get a little bit more visits to the relevant websites and Facebook pages, etc. So if you can, go and give them a look-see. But other than that, absolutely fantastic being on, and excellent broadcast again as usual, Joe.
Brilliant, mate. Yeah, I appreciate that. And yeah, good luck to you and the rest of the team. Looks like you've got a real good outfit down there across both of the garages. So yeah, best of luck, and I'm sure we'll speak to you in the near future.
Thank you very much. All the best.
Cheers, mate. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Grant Miller there. Great to get a word from him, and of course, good result at the front of the Premier class. But it was also a good result. Maybe not exactly what Andy Dawson was looking for, but he still came in with a P2. Andy, welcome in. Can you hear us, first of all?
I can.
Welcome, Andy, back into the box for the second week running. It was looking very good for you, but albeit the points scored still very promising, of course. Yet to finish outside the top 4. It was difficult, wasn't it? You were leading the way for such a long time. You had a bit of an issue in the pit stop. I believe you had a 2 seconds slower stop than the Mr. Derbyshire, which is ultimately your change of position. But first of all, talk us through the first stage of the race before you got into the pit stops. You were doing exactly what you needed to do. Took pole position, of course, in the absence of Vincezewski's. Must have felt good to start that way, at least from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, it was nice to get pole eventually. I think it sort of helped me sort of lead the way from the start. I was struggling a little bit with some CPU issues. Mugello's very CPU heavy, getting a couple of screen freezes at every other corner, so it was quite a difficult race. It was difficult just managing the PC, but then managing the gap to Sam as well. But no doubt, Sam's mega quick driver, really clean driver, and that's why he's also helping us out in Sim Coach as well, with a bit of coaching here and there. So I mean, worthy winner at the end of the day.
And I mean, for you, Andy, it's been a really good, consistent season up to this point. What are the keys been in the opening 4 rounds? You know, vastly different circuits, but you seem to be quick at all of them. But I know you obviously won't necessarily want to give away your secrets. You've got to be paid for that. But what are the little things that you've been working on over the course of the season that have really enabled you to be consistent all the way through?
I think really I just sort of like keep the same kind of driving style that I've always had, no matter whether it's LMP2, GT3, GTP. I sort of just basically underdrive the car, sort of drive it at sort of that 90% sort of range, long and low braking, and it just keeps the tyres in a good window, keeps the balance efficient, and yeah, I mean, it's not really rocket science as such. It's very, very simple terms. It's more, I think the difficult part is sort of like trying to get into that sort of motion and trying to understand those techniques. And you know, that's what I try and coach through all of the sessions that I do each week.
So good stuff, Andy. Imola next up this time next week. It's a circuit that's a bit of the same and a bit different in certain ways, of course, to the circuit here in Mugello. So how are you looking forward to that? How do you think the Mercedes as a machine will stack up around that sort of track? And then, of course, we sort of contrast that the following week by heading to the Gilles Villeneuve circuit, which is sort of flipping the whole thing on its head.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm not mad keen of Imola. To be honest, I've never really sort of gelled with that circuit. I'm not really sure what it is about it as such, but it's not been one of my favourites, to be honest. But you know, I'll go there, try my best as always, and have some fun.
How does it feel? Obviously, you've got some sort of working relationship with the Vulcan drivers, but it must be a little bit of a worry. I'm looking at the standings now, and it's yourself obviously leading the way, and then from second down to sixth. And then if you want to include 8th, we can as well. But from 2nd down to 6th, it's all the Vulcan drivers. It's you standing out there on your own, having to fend off all of those guys. Surely that adds a little bit of pressure. Or maybe does it do the opposite? Does it take the pressure off? Because it's sort of 6v1 at the moment.
You know, Joe, I don't really feel pressure as such, to be honest. I sort of focus on myself.
Best way to
obviously
be.
I've got that working relationship with Vulcan. They're all good guys, all quality drivers. I don't doubt that they'll challenge me, but I mean, yeah, literally just do my own thing and see what happens at the end of the season.
Absolutely right, mate. That is the best way to go, and I'm sure it will serve you well over the next 5 or 6 weeks then. So good stuff, Andy. Congratulations again. Not quite what you wanted, but still proper strong points to bring home for yourself and the team. So as always, we'll give you an opportunity to give anybody a shout out if you'd like to do that before we go ahead and close for the evening.
Yeah, just shout out to SimCoach as well. Shout out to yourselves. Shout out to Sam as well, because I mean Sam's gave me a really good race throughout there. I mean 3.5 seconds between us and quite a large gap to third. So that was really good, really eventful. I also want to give a separate shout out to everybody who donated during the Basic 24 last weekend. We raised a massive £12,500 for MS research. So I think for anybody that's watching this, just thank you very much if anybody checked in and donated.
That's a very good cause and a very good sum, so congratulations for you, and I hope it all went well. I'm sure we'll hear a little bit about that a little bit later on. So very good, Andy. Thanks for coming, thanks for joining us, and good luck with your prep, and we'll see you out there next time, this time next week.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks again.
Cheers, Andy. See you, mate.
See you.
Andy Dawson there. Great to get a word from him after a P2 night for the Sim Coach driver. And it's been a good evening's worth of racing again, Joe. That race really went. It felt like it flew, but they're often the best races, aren't they?
It does, yeah. It did feel slightly different to last week. The race around Zandvoort was by far the standout of the season, but this one was closely matched, of course. It started out very, very well indeed, and the gaps stayed pretty tight for the early portion of those races, of this race, should I say. Started to space out a little bit, which is only natural, but then we did get a few changes of position toward the end there. So we're seeing the lead car, the Vulcan Motorsports Corvette of Sam Derbyshire, making his way around the circuit. But that'll be it for us this time, for this week, should I say. And we'll look forward to joining these drivers back in Italy this time next week when they arrive at Imola for the first time in a little while then. So before we finish, let's take a look at what we have going on elsewhere in SimRacing International. So of course you can join myself and Dara and Mr. Paul Walsh here on Thursday evenings for Split A and Split B of the GT3 Season 10 Championship. Be sure to go and jump over, give Paul's stream some love before he finishes over there. He will still be underway with his post-race interviews. Every Sunday we have the every other Sunday we have the UKSR GT3 Championship hosted by Mr. Paul Walsh on the following Wednesday, usually with a post-race broadcast. On Sunday evenings, alternatively, we have the American GT Challenge again with Mr. Paul Walsh as that heads in to the 6th round around Sebring next week. I believe it's the first night race of the season for a whole 90 minutes. So that's a big one to look forward to. I'm about to start my preparation for that over this weekend. Can't wait to get going there. Practice League is available, of course, Tuesday evenings and Saturday mornings and occasionally Saturday afternoons. Anyone can join. Drop us a message in the Discord, discord.gg/SimRacing International to get involved with us as always. So a big thanks to everyone who joined us in the chat. Looking forward to meeting you all again this time next week when we arrive at the halfway stage of the season for the 5th round of the championship at Imola. Everyone enjoy the weekend and we'll see you all very shortly.